Chapter 26:10. Humph! The emperor gave a cold snort. Crown Prince? He isn't worthy of being the crown prince. Someone, take the assassin and bring him back to the court justice. No need. Du Qichao gave a cold laugh as he looked up at Du Jiusheng. The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. A loss is a loss. I never thought that you would keep a low profile for all these years. You really are enduring humiliation. If you didn't kill Magistrate Luo's family, I could endure humiliation for a lifetime. Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes. We both have obsessions, but it's a pity that I'm more open than you. You want both? I just want her. It was the same kind of deep love, carrying out his plan step by step for the person he loved. But Du Jiusheng was much more pure. Ha 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 ha. Du Qichao wildly laughed. He used all his strength to take the sword from the guard and put it to his neck. Such a good word. Du Jiusheng, I'll wait for you on the road to the underworld. As soon as his voice fell, he roared out as the sword cut his neck and blood splattered onto the Supreme Harmony Hall. He thought in his heart, Senior sister, I'm coming to accompany you. Perhaps Du Qichao didn't know whether it was losing the throne that made him lose the will to live or losing Yulong Qing that made him lose the will to live. In short, when he lost these two things, he found that he couldn't live anymore. The emperor saw this scene, and there was a mist in his eyes. His heart was filled with mixed feelings, but he couldn't express it. He was his son in the end, the crown prince who had lived a life of luxury since he was young. Actually, even if he broke out of prison and tried to assassinate him in the Supreme Harmony Hall, he didn't plan on killing him as a father. He could be demoted to a commoner and live a life without worrying about food and clothing. But he chose to end his own life. When everything was settled, Du Jiusheng slowly walked over to Luo Qingchen and softly covered her eyes. Fool! Nothing will happen to me. For you, I will protect myself. Luo Qingchen closed her eyes and nodded as tears fell down. She didn't know why she was crying. Perhaps it was because she was touched, or perhaps it was because she was afraid, or perhaps it was because everything had finally come to an end. There was no one who could threaten their lives at all times. They seemed to be one step closer to growing old together. After Du Qichao died, the empress rushed into the Hall of Supreme Harmony like a madwoman and picked up his corpse. She cried so sadly, so tragically. At this moment, she suddenly began to regret. If I hadn't saved Luo Qingchen because I was soft-hearted, would everything have been different? Would her son be able to ascend to the throne? Would his son be able to live a long life? If Luo Qingchen knew that the empress had such a question, she would definitely tell her. Yes, because in another world, perhaps she and Du Jiusheng would have already died. That night, the empress cried for an entire night in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Her miserable cries pierced through the sky, and it began to rain heavily that night. The emperor decreed that no one was to disturb the empress. But they didn't know that the next morning, they would see 3 feet of white silk hanging from the beam of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. That beam was so high that even a tall and sturdy man might not be able to hang the white silk up. But the empress just hung it up. Chapter 26:11. Since the emperor was sick, the funerals of Du Qichao and the empress were arranged by Du Jiusheng. The emperor's meaning was that if you wanted to inherit everything, you had to personally end everything. Luo Qingchen came with the status of a future princess. Although Du Jiusheng was the only candidate for the crown prince, before the emperor gave the decree, the ministers didn't dare say anything. I don't want you to attend their funerals at all. Du Jiusheng softly took her hand as a faint sparkle appeared in his deep eyes. They should be buried with Uncle Luo. Why do you have to mourn them? Without knowing why, when Du Jiusheng said this to her, she felt a special warmth in her heart. That's right. Why does she have to mourn them? When the Luo family was exterminated and 66 people died, who mourned them? It's fine. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath. It wasn't just to Du Jiusheng, it was to herself. The matter of the cold moon, I also feel a bit melancholy. Adding in the fact that the empress did save my life. There's no harm in a simple mourning. Their deaths were the greatest mourning for the Luo family. As the rain fell, Luo Qingchen saw everything in front of her and her heart strangely felt a bit uncomfortable. It wasn't until the lightning rumbled and her eyes lit up for a moment that she fell into a deep darkness. She only felt a warm embrace firmly holding her, and an anxious voice surrounded her ears. She couldn't hear it clearly. It was like it was shouting, "Ching Chinger." He didn't have a good sleep. The dream that he had in the northern cold palace came again, as scheduled. Compared to last time, it was even more real. She didn't know why. Everything had been settled, and all the threats had been eradicated. She didn't know why, but she still had this nightmare. Rather than saying that the dream was more real, it was better to say that the scene was more real. She woke up panting again and was covered in sweat. Du Jiusheng sat on the side and softly wiped the sweat off her forehead as he said with a pained look, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell me what?" Luo Qingqian's eyes trembled as she said, "Perhaps I've been too tired recently." Perhaps in addition to being physically tired, he was also mentally tired. Although he had gotten his revenge, he still felt a little desolate. She would rather the Empress be evil beyond redemption. She would rather Yulong Qing be a white lotus. Then, at the very least, she wouldn't feel any regret when the two of them died. "Congratulations, 9th princess consort. You're already a month pregnant. The fetus is the most vulnerable in the first 3 months. Your Highness, you must pay more attention to it." Pregnant? Luo Qingqian was stunned for a moment, and a faint blush appeared on her white cheeks. Could it be that they had no choice but to sleep together that day? No, it could only be that day. After that day, Du Jiusheng became very busy, and they didn't have much time together. "From now on, our Qing will be a big child." Du Jiusheng softly patted her head. "You have to take care of a little child." Luo Qingqian lowered her head in embarrassment. She wanted to say something, but found that there were outsiders. Having been in the palace for so many years, the imperial physician naturally understood. He immediately said, "This minister won't stop the 9th master from talking to the princess consort. I'll leave first." Du Jiusheng said with a nod, "Many thanks." After several years, there were only Luo Qingqian and Du Jiusheng in the palace. She nodded slightly and looked around the magnificent surroundings. "Which palace is this?" Chapter 26:12. The King's Landing Palace wasn't far from the Supreme Harmony Hall. To the left was the Ning Palace, and to the right was the Imperial Study. This was the palace where the emperor lived when he was the crown prince. But after becoming the emperor, it had always been empty. Now that the emperor had Du Jiusheng move into the King's Landing Palace, it was enough to prove Du Jiusheng's position in the palace and in the emperor's heart. It seems like big brother Jiusheng's ambition can finally be realized. Luo Qingqian rubbed her flat stomach and said with a smile, "Nianen will definitely not have to worry about food and clothing in the future." "Nianen?" Du Jiusheng was surprised as he said, "Qing, you've already given her a name?" Luo Qingqian said with a smile, "It could be considered so." Thinking of the last time she saw Nian, and it was a long, long time ago. At that time, she and Du Jiusheng hadn't been with him as he grew up. But she vaguely remembered him in school, on the basketball court. In the eyes of the girls, he was that handsome and dazzling. Nian and Du Jiusheng softly repeated these two words before saying with a gentle smile, "But this is more like a boy's name. What if it's a girl?" "It's not a girl." Luo Qingqian firmly shook her head. "It's a boy. A handsome and outstanding boy like big brother Jiusheng." If possible, she really hoped that she and Du Jiusheng could be with this child for a long time, giving him all the love she couldn't give him in her previous life. Du Jiusheng saw her determined eyes and asked in a surprised voice, "Qinger, why are you so certain it's a boy?" "Because I've seen him before," Luo Qingqian said with a faint smile. In another space and time, there was also big brother Jiusheng. Those distant memories seemed to stretch out. In her mind, in her memories, although it had been a long time, she couldn't forget the bits and pieces that had happened between them. "There's also me?" "Yes," Luo Qingqian said with a nod. "So when we first met, I said that I had been waiting for you for a long, long time. 10 planes, nearly 1,000 years. Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes and looked at her with a deep gaze before slowly saying, Our second child is a daughter. I want a daughter as beautiful as Qing'er. He never doubted her words, because when he first saw her, he felt a sense of déjà vu. He felt as if he had seen her somewhere before, as if he had loved her deeply before. Daughter. Luo Qingshun lowered her eyes. Her clear eyes gradually dimmed. She smiled bitterly and said, "In that space-time, we didn't have a good ending. Other than Yin and we don't have any other children." Her depressed tone made Du Jiusheng's heart ache. It was like he could see the story between them through her eyes. Bit by bit, it was full of sorrow. "Silly girl, don't be sad." He stroked her head while pulling her into his embrace. "It must be because I didn't protect you at that time, which led to our bad ending." "No." Luo Qingshun shook her head and said, "It was because you protected me at all costs that you left me." After saying this, she felt that her voice was a bit choked up. The past was an incomparably precious memory, but there was a suffocating feeling in her heart when she thought about it. Hope was here after all these hardships. Chapter 26:13. Spring came in March, and the spring fields came. Luo Qingshun had been living in the monarch's landing palace these days, and there were several dozen maids who took care of her. In just a few months, she had become the most important woman in the harem. But she wasn't the emperor's woman. Other than Du Jiusheng taking care of business, he spent most of his time in the monarch's landing palace with her. He often made snacks for her and often played the zither for Nian, and who hadn't been born yet. Since the empress and the crown prince died, the emperor's body hadn't been good, and he had been on his deathbed recently. With all the ministers, he wrote an edict that if he died, Du Jiusheng would take the throne. That cold palace king who had been sealed in the northern cold palace for a long time had become the person with the most power in the Mo dynasty. Not long after, the emperor died, and Du Jiusheng took the throne. Luo Qingshun would never forget that day. The blue sky and the clouds, every scene was just right. She was wearing a cherry red double butterfly dress, standing on a high platform not far away, looking at him with a gentle smile. It was great. Everything was great like this. The court changed, and the harem changed. Those new girls were prepared for the previous emperor, but after the previous emperor died, they naturally wanted to win Du Jiusheng's favor. It was a pity that in less than a day after these rumors spread, those so-called young girls all strangely disappeared from the palace. That day, Du Jiusheng ran to the imperial kitchen to make her a bowl of egg drop soup. Luo Qingshun ate while asking with a smile, "I heard that the young girls in the palace all disappeared in a single night. Do you think this is related to our big brother Jiusheng?" Du Jiusheng couldn't help giving a chuckle when he heard this as he took her in his embrace. "It's related. Where did they go?" Luo Qingshun never thought that Du Jiusheng would be this honest. She lazily leaned in his embrace and asked, "Where did they go?" Du Jiusheng calmly looked at her and said, "They were buried with royal father." "What?" Luo Qingshun was shocked. She jumped up from the soft couch and looked at him in surprise. "Really? You. Du Jiusheng took her hand and softly patted her head. "If your mother's person, why aren't you calm?" "Calm? How could he remain calm? There were at least 100 little mistresses in the palace. Their big brother, Jiusheng, wouldn't be that black-bellied and really bury them with him. I'm letting them make a choice." Du Jiusheng said with a gentle smile. "Leave the palace or be buried with them." Hearing this, Luo Qingshun chuckled. "So they all chose the Li Palace? Could it be that Qing'er thinks that they will choose to be buried with royal father?" Du Jiusheng looked at her with deep eyes. "Not everyone is as silly as Qing. There isn't that much love in this world." Luo Qingshun looked at his serious expression and was a bit surprised. After a while, she said with a faint smile, "I'm not silly." All right, you're not silly." He wrapped her in the blanket on the side and said in a gentle voice, "Let's sleep after we finish eating the egg drop soup. There's nothing to do today, so I'll take you for a walk when you wake up." "All right." Du Jiusheng hugged her, and she hugged the warm blanket. The room was filled with sandalwood, and there was a faint fragrance in the air that made people quickly fall asleep. Dreams, bright and dark dreams, appeared one after another. When she felt that she was about to walk into the light, a powerful black fog swallowed her. Chapter 26:14. When she woke up again, it was already nighttime, and Du Jiusheng wasn't by her side. The maid saw that she was awake and immediately said, "Empress, the emperor went to the imperial study to take care of something. He has already ordered this servant to serve the empress dinner when she wakes up." Although the empress coronation hadn't happened yet, the people in the palace were already calling her empress. The title of empress was just a matter of time after Nian was born. After all, the empress coronation was very complicated. Now that she was pregnant, he didn't want anything to happen to her, so he pushed the coronation back to after the prince was born. Whether it was the court or the harem, there was no one who dared to object. Luo Qingshan nodded before wiping the sweat off her forehead. "You can go and prepare." "Yes." Everyone answered in unison. Luo Qingshan narrowed her eyes and looked out the window. It should be getting late. Du Jiusheng shouldn't be heading to the imperial study at this time, unless something important had happened. At the same time, in the imperial study, Suyu had rushed back from the border, and there was also Qin Yao Yao from the Mo kingdom who had arrived this morning, as well as the head steward Yanu. There was a map of the border in front of the four of them. The Liao army had swallowed the four surrounding small countries, and their forces had greatly increased. The Liao army's General Yeluqi had already set his sights on Dragon Gate Pass. After the Mo kingdom and the Chun kingdom became allies, the Liao people didn't dare easily attack Dragon Gate Pass. But because of the Liao people's young heroes, with a new vice general, the army's morale had greatly increased. They had taken down several small countries, and their forces kept increasing. This vice general's name was Xiao Shun. "Big Brother Jiao, the situation at the border isn't good. This Xiao Shun has the name Zhuge Shun. I've used the strategy you gave me to fight him, and I've been defeated by him. He is indeed an expert." Suyu tightly knit his brows as he analyzed the current situation for Du Jiusheng. Du Jiusheng looked at the terrain of Dragon Gate Pass and softly said, "Dragon Gate Pass is easy to defend and hard to attack. If he wants to break through, he must use a strategy." He used the strategy of luring the tiger away from the mountain, and I almost fell for it. Qin Yao Yao sighed and said, "Fortunately, Suyu broke through the encirclement and came to save me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be able to see Qingshan again." She came back from the front lines this time to discuss strategy with Du Jiusheng and to see Luo Qingshan, who was about to give birth. After all, she was the most real witness of this baby. When the baby was born, she would definitely teach him how to play the zither, how to wield the sword, and become his godmother. Originally, I was supposed to go to the front line with Suyu. Du Jiusheng slightly knit his brows, but Qingshan is about to give birth, and she's been having nightmares recently, so her mood isn't stable. I can't leave now. When he was with this group of true brothers and friends, he never referred to himself as Jean, but rather as I. It was his true way of treating his brother and his friend. Ninth brother, sister-in-law, is the most important. Suyu patted his chest and said, "Besides, it's impossible for the imperial palace to exist without you, so leave the battlefield to me." "That's right. Little sister Qingshan, is this good?" Qin Yao Yao said with a smile. "You have to treat her well. Do I need you to tell me that?" Du Jiusheng's serious face had a trace of gentleness. It was probably because of the mention of Luo Qingshan that all his worries were swept away. Chapter 26:15. 3 hours later, they came up with a plan to deal with Xiao Shun. From arranging the troops to breaking through, Du Jiusheng was as detailed as possible to avoid giving the Liao people a chance. "The day after tomorrow, Yao Yao and I will head to the border again." Suyu rolled up the map and said, with Brother Joe's arrangement and adding in the fact that the Dragon Gate Pass is easy to defend, "I don't believe that Xiao Shun can grow wings and fly into my great Mo country. There's also my great Shun. I've heard what you said, that Xiao Shun really isn't easy to deal with." Du Jiusheng said, "You have to be careful. The Mo country and the Chun country are interdependent. The Liao army is too strong, so you have to work together." To Du Jiusheng, if the Liao army attacked the Dragon Gate Pass, their chances of winning would be very low. Xiao Shun wasn't a brute. Naturally, he knew this. If they wanted to break through this difficult pass with the least amount of troops, The most likely way was to sow discord. If it was him, he would think that this was the best move. A smart person would always know what a smart person was thinking. Therefore, Du Jiusheng would definitely be able to guess what Xiaoshan was thinking. After eating dinner, Luo Qingshan fell into a deep sleep again. She didn't know when Du Jiusheng would come back. She just knew that when she woke up, he was gently holding her. "You're awake." Seeing her bright eyes, Du Jiusheng raised his hand to push back the hair in front of her forehead. "Did you sleep well?" "Cuckoo." Luo Qingshan reached out to tap his red right hand, as if it was a bit numb from being used as a pillow. She cleared her throat and said, "Speak. Which palace did our emperor sleep in last night?" She knew that he went to the imperial study to take care of something, so she was just teasing him. For people, 3 men and 1 woman. It's that exciting? Luo Qingshan pretended to be surprised as she raised a brow. "So our big brother, Jiusheng, likes this. Girl, you..." Du Jiusheng hugged her and said, "I didn't know that Qing was this naughty before, but now that I've seen her..." "What? Is big brother, Jiu Shang, tired of being with me for so long?" Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said, "So you feel that the previous me is cuter?" Du Jiusheng was speechless. He could only look at her with a gentle smile. "The current Qing is the cutest." "Ah, that means you weren't cute in the past." Luo Qingshan found that the question she gave Du Jiusheng was a death sentence, but this death sentence was very warm. "Cute. They're all cute." Du Jiusheng pinched her little face. "Our Qing is the cutest girl in this world." "That's more like it." Luo Qingshan returned to the main topic. "Did something urgent happen in the imperial study last night? Tell me about it." She knew that he didn't want her to worry, so he avoided talking about many things. But she knew better than anyone else that she had to know everything and avoid every risk. "There are some battles at the border. Su Yu is back." Du Jiusheng patted her little head. "Is there someone you definitely want to see?" "Who?" "The Chun country's princess." "What?" "Yao Yao's back," Luo Qingshan said with a happy smile. "It really has been a long time. Where are they? I'll go find them." "Why are you looking for them?" Du Jiusheng looked at her big belly and said, "They're all waiting for you outside the door." With a single order from Qing they appeared. You. Luo Qingshan bit her lip and said, "Big brother, Jiusheng really is impolite." Chapter 26:16. With Du Jiusheng's promotion, Su Yu had gone from a vice general to a main general. The army trusted him to begin with, so this matter didn't affect the army that much. Even if Su Yu wasn't the main general, there were still many soldiers that only listened to him. "Zizi, you've made us wait this long." Chen Yao saw Luo Qingshan come over with a happy look and rubbed her big belly. "We've already agreed. I am your godmother. No one can stop me." Luo Qingshan revealed a faint smile and waved her hand to the maids. "Go and prepare some tea and pastries first." "Yes, this servant will leave now." After the maids left, there were only the 5 of them left in the king's landing hall. The mute slave had been silently sitting on the side, watching Luo Qingshan the entire time. Luo Qingshan could see the growth in the mute slave's eyes. From a mute eunuch that any maid could bully to the manager of the palace, the mute slave's growth had been very big. As a result, Luo Qingshan rarely saw him dance around and silently do everything, becoming Du Jiusheng's most profitable right hand. When the 4 of them were happily chatting, he would silently go out to prepare some pastries and tea before having the maids leave. He would specially prepare a pot of red date tea for Luo Qingshan. The Bai Luo Chun tea wasn't good for pregnant women, so he wanted to use his meager strength to give Luo Qingshan the best things possible. Although it was nothing compared to Du Jiusheng, he was very happy doing it. In the first half of his life, there were only 2 people who were good to him. One was Du Jiusheng, and the other was Luo Qingshan. To him, as long as the 2 of them had a good life, nothing else mattered. He had a cheap life to begin with, being mute and lame. But even like this, when Du Jiusheng took the throne, he didn't care about anything and made the mute slave the manager of the palace, giving him all the rights he should have. "Wow, why is younger sister Qing's tea different from ours?" Chun Yao Yao smelled Luo Qingchen's red date tea and said greedily, "It smells so good." "Thank you, mute slave." Du Jiusheng nodded at him, sincerely thanking him for taking care of Luo Qingchen during this time. When facing Du Jiusheng, the mute slave would dance from time to time and awkwardly scratch his head. For him, no matter what status Du Jiusheng had, as long as he was praised, he would feel embarrassed. TSK, TSK, TSK. Chun Yao Yao pouted her lips and said, "I envy little Sister Qing." "What are you envious of?" "Sister-in-law didn't say that she wouldn't let you drink." Su Yu retorted, "You're a princess, yet you're so stingy." "How am I stingy?" Chun Yao Yao put her hands on her hips and said, "Su Yu, tell me, do you not like me? If it's just a fight, what's the point of talking?" Seeing that Chun Yao Yao was a bit angry, Su Yu immediately raised his hands and said, I don't dare. Please calm down, princess." "Poochie." Seeing them arguing, Luo Qingchen couldn't help saying with a chuckle, "The way you argue is really interesting. People who don't know would think that you're all family." "Who's family with her? Who's family with her?" There were some people who spoke at the same time. Luo Qingchen could see a bit of starlight in Chun Yao Yao's red cheeks and sparkling eyes. Also her flustered actions. Chapter 26:17. Hot, hot, hot. It's burning me to death. Chun Yao Yao jumped up from her seat as her face turned completely red. Su Yu on the side quickly gave her a cup of water. "What are you panicking for? I'm not panicking yet." "Gulu gulu." Chun Yao Yao drank a few mouthfuls of water. "I'm not panicking, all right? This princess is someone who will panic." "Then why are you drinking so fast?" "You're scalded," Su Yu said with a helpless smile. No wonder you're surrounded by enemies and need me to save you." "Humph." Chun Yao Yao gave a soft snort. "Then don't save me next time." "All right, stop bickering, you two." Du Jiusheng raised a brow and said with a faint smile, "It's hard to come back. Let's just let Qing watch you argue." Luo Qingchen said with a faint smile, "You also argue like this in the army." "Of course not." Chun Yao Yao said, "How could the atmosphere of the army be this good? It's very tense." Actually, Chun Yao Yao knew better than anyone. When Luo Qingchen mentioned her and Su Yu, her face turned red and her heart began to beat faster. This feeling should be caring. It should be a bit of liking. Then let's not mention this. Luo Qingchen raised her teacup and said, "It's hard for us to get together. Let's put aside the military matters tonight, all right?" Chun Yao Yao nodded in agreement. "In. Let's toast with tea in place of wine." "Cheers." Luo Qingchen would never forget that night. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The moonlight fell onto everyone's faces and they were filled with laughter. 2 days later, Chun Yao Yao and Su Yu left for the Dragon Gate camp together. Luo Qingchen stood at the palace gates to send them off, slightly knitting her brows as she felt a bit worried. Du Jiusheng didn't want to let her go since she was pregnant. Although she was in a sedan, he was still worried that she would be blown away by the wind. Not only did he wrap her up in 3 layers, but he also accompanied her the whole time, following behind her like a bodyguard. "Be careful," Luo Qingchen said with a sigh. "I've heard Big Brother Jiusheng say that the military advisor called Xiao Shun is very powerful. If there is any trouble, he will send an urgent letter from 800 miles away." She had always felt that Chun Yao Yao was very brave. She was clearly a princess of the Chun kingdom, and she could wear beautiful brocade clothes and enjoy wealth in the palace. But she chose to go to the battlefield to protect her country and her people. "Don't worry." Chun Yao Yao patted her head like a big sister and said, as expected of someone who's going to be a concubine, so long-winded, "I'm just worried about you." Luo Qingchen silently came over to prevent Du Jiusheng and Su Yu from not far away from her from hearing. She came to her ear and said, "If we win this Dragon Gate Pass, you don't need to go to the battlefield. You're even thinking about life." In the next second, Chun Yao Yao blushed and said, Why are you saying this? The battle hasn't started yet." I know." Chun Yao Yao bit her lips, blinked her eyes in a panic, and said shyly, "I already have a plan. I still know the feeling of liking someone." "Wah, so you're admitting it." Before Luo Qingchen could finish, Chen Yao Yao covered her mouth and said, "Little Sister Qing, be quiet. I don't want to say it yet." "All right, all right, all right." Luo Qingshun made a gesture and said, "When you come back victorious, I will definitely drink your wedding wine." "Oh no, I want to watch your wedding night." Chapter 26:18. At the same time, the two men not far away were also discussing. "I don't know if the baby will be born when we come back victorious." Suyu crossed his arms. "Right, Brother Jiu, have you thought of a name?" Du Jiusheng said with a nod. "Qing, I said it called Nianin. It's like the name of a little prince." "Qing said it's a little prince." Suyu said with a stunned expression, "Is Sister Qing this amazing?" Du Jiusheng nodded again as he looked at him with a look of showing off his wife. "Qing also said that you would definitely like Yao Yao." Suyu was stunned when he heard this as his mind kept changing. Was he admitting it or denying it? 3 seconds later, he turned to Du Jiusheng with a sincere look and asked, "Did Sister Qing say if she likes me or not?" "Which her?" Du Jiusheng raised a brow as a playful look appeared in his eyes. Brother Jiu." Seeing Su Yu's annoyed look, Du Jiusheng couldn't help saying with a smile, "Qing said." "What did she say?" "She likes you." Hearing this, Su Yu was stunned for 2 seconds, then he laughed like a fool. "Ha ha 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 ha." His eyes fell onto Chen Yao Yao not far away. "When I come back, Brother Jiu will give me a marriage. I will protect her in the future. I won't let her go to the battlefield again." Every time he broke through to save her, Su Yu would feel fear in his heart. He thought it was just his comradeship at first, but then he learned that it wasn't just that. "All right, I'll wait for you." Luo Qingshun and Du Jiusheng sent Su Yu and Chen Yao Yao off. The sun was very big that day, but she couldn't feel the warmth of the sun when she stood at the palace gates. There was an uneasy feeling that spread layer by layer her heart. In the 10th month of the same year, Nian was born. There was a loud cry, and the imperial doctor excitedly kneeled on the ground. "Congratulations, Emperor! Congratulations, Emperor! It's the little prince." Du Jiusheng looked at the swaddled prince before walking to the bed to take Luo Qingshun in his embrace. "It's been hard on you." She gently wiped the sweat off her forehead and panted slightly. "Let me take a look at Nian and rest well." "What are you looking at?" Du Jiusheng patted her head and said, "He made you suffer so much. I will definitely teach him when he grows up." At that time, he could still vaguely remember her heart-wrenching screams when she was giving birth, and it made his heart ache. "He's still a baby, yet you want to educate him." Luo Qingchun chuckled and said, "Aren't you being a bit too strict as a father? Who asked him to cause our Qing to suffer?" "No." Luo Qingchun shook her head. "With you and Nian by my side, I don't feel tired at all." To her, such days were simply too blissful. To a certain extent, Nian's birth had reassured her, making her less afraid. Even that terrifying nightmare hadn't come for a long time. But there was nothing in this special plane that could do as she wished. On the 10th day after Nian was born, there was news from the Dragon Gate that Chen Yao Yao had been captured by the Liao people. Xiao Shen used a scheme to trap Chen Yao Yao in the North Pit Mountain and captured her alive. He wanted Su Yu to open the Dragon Gate, otherwise he would kill her. The two armies faced each other. Su Yu stood at the Dragon Gate, looking at Chen Yao Yao in front of the Liao army. Chapter 26:19. If I'm stupid enough to fall into their trap again, don't come and save me. I'm not saving her. There's nothing to be gained from saving her once. Why would I save her a second time? But how could he not save her? General, the Qin nation has decided not to save their princess. The deputy general hurriedly ran over. Should we start a war or close the gate? The Dragon Gate was the most important line of defense between the Mo nation and the Qin nation. If they failed, the Liao army would most likely attack them directly. One was the person he loved, the other was the nation he had to protect. How should he choose between the two? General, we can't close the gate. That's right. Once the Dragon Gate is opened, the Mo nation will perish. So you clenched his fists. He closed his eyes, then suddenly opened them. He said to the deputy general behind him, "Let the envoy pass a message." "General, please speak." We can't open the gate, but Su Yu narrowed his eyes. He looked at the bloody girl tied to a metal chain and said, I can use my life to exchange for the Chun Nation's princess life. General, you can't. No way. No. Are you going to disobey a military order? Su Yu's sharp eyes were bloodshot. He said coldly, Go. Yes. The envoy approached the Liao army step by step until he knelt in front of Xiao Shun. The dragon gate cannot be opened. The chained girl's fingertips twitched. She seemed to have sensed something, but she didn't have the strength to open her eyes. Until the next second, that person continued. But General Su Yu is willing to use his life to exchange for the Chun Nation's princess life. At that moment, Chen Yaoyao suddenly opened her eyes. There was a faint mist in her eyes. She didn't know where she got the strength to open her eyes. When she was captured alive by the Liao army, she didn't eat anything. There wasn't a single part of her body that was intact. She was covered in wounds. She felt like she should die. Her blood was about to run dry. She should die. However, when she heard Xiao Shun tell her that he was going to use her as a hostage to force Su Yu to open the Dragon Gate, she held on to her last breath. It was because she wanted to see him again. Just one time is enough. I have no regrets in this life. Huh? Xiao Shun snorted coldly. He looked at Chen Yaoyao, who had just opened her eyes, and said, You said he was sacrificing his life for the greater good? Or is it for personal reasons? Chen Yaoyao looked at the confident Xiao Shun. Her pale lips curled up slightly as she said, Whether it's for public or private reasons, I won't do as you wish. As soon as he finished speaking, a click sound was heard, and the iron chain that was originally tightly locked around Chen Yaoyao suddenly loosened. Last night, she finally managed to open the chains, but she knew that she couldn't escape. She was no longer the Mulan Yao who fought in front of the three armies like a man. Now, it was as if a gust of wind could blow her away. You? Xiao Shun was shocked. He stared at her with wide eyes. Chen Yaoyao sneered. Before he could react, she ran toward the dragon gate with all her might. Xiao Shun roared, Catch her! Su Yu, who was standing on a high platform, felt his heart skip a beat. He roared, Arrow formation, protect the princess. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless arrows brushed past her body and hit the people chasing her. She kept running. She used all her strength to keep running. In the past, when she rode on a horse, she always felt that this path was so close. But now, her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the blurry figure on the high platform. Why was it so far? Why was it so long? Why couldn't she run? In the blink of an eye, a long arrow pierced her chest from the back. At this moment, her legs felt heavy. Chapter 26:20. Xiao Shun coldly put down his bow and watched as Chen Yaoyao fell halfway from Longman Pass. Yellow sand blew up, and a murderous aura filled the entire Longman Pass. Other than the sound of the wind, there was another man's heart-wrenching scream. Chen Yaoyao. Su Yu clenched his fist and roared like a madman. Fire! Yes, General. The soldiers of the Mo Kingdom and Chun Kingdom were enraged, and countless arrows were fired at the Liao army. Xiao Shun immediately ordered, Retreat, retreat. They were in a dangerous position. If it wasn't for Chen Yaoyao being a hostage, they wouldn't have gotten so close to Longmen Pass without a plan. This was a place that was easy to defend, but hard to attack. Now that the hostage was dead, if they didn't retreat, they would be wiped out. Chase after them. Su Yu's eyes were bloodshot. Tears of vicissitudes fell from the corners of his eyes. This was a most painful moment in his life. He watched as his beloved was pierced through the heart by an arrow. He watched as she couldn't run to him and fell in front of him. He knew Chen Yaoyao well. She was a strong woman. If she had a chance to fight back, she wouldn't give up. Yes, General. The soldiers came out in full force to chase after the Liao army. This time, Su Yu didn't go first. Instead, he went last. He knelt down in front of Chen Yaoyao and gently hugged her, feeling the last of her warmth. Right at this moment, the woman in his arms moved. Yaoyao. Su Yu's expression changed. He trembled as he said, I'll take you to the army doctor. She clutched his armor tightly and shook her head gently. Then, with great difficulty, she spat out a sentence. I'll keep my last breath waiting for you. Stalling for time in front of the king of hell was 10,000 times more painful than dying. But Qin Yao Yao kept telling herself that she had to wait. She had to wait for Suyu Yao Yao. Yao Yao. Suyu felt suffocated as he watched the woman he loved being tortured beyond recognition. Qing. Little sister Qing said that you like me. Qin Yao Yao said word by word with difficulty. Unfortunately, I can't love you. At this moment, the scene outside the palace gate that day vaguely appeared before her eyes. Luo Qingshun sent her off with her big belly. She even said that she wanted to be the little prince's godmother. She even said that she wanted to teach him how to wield the sword and how to play the zither. She even said that she had to be honest with him when she came back. Unfortunately, it was impossible for all of that to happen. The scene in front of her became more and more blurry, and she could no longer hear anything. She only felt that the man holding her seemed to be trembling endlessly. Yao Yao, Qin Yao Yao, don't die. Ninth brother said that when we go back this time, he will bestow a marriage upon us. Don't die. I beg you, I beg you. He screamed at the top of his lungs, praying to the heavens. Unfortunately, the woman in his arms could not give him any response. She died. Her beautiful eyes were wide open as she held on until the very last moment. She didn't want to die. She tried her best to live on. In the end, she couldn't even bear to close her eyes. But there was no other way. She couldn't do it. Boom! Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as a torrential rain fell from the sky. Suyu held Qin Yao Yao as he looked up to the sky and sighed. Some pain was only known to oneself, but some people would never be able to forget. Chapter 26-21. That battle was known as the Battle of Songs in history. The Qin country's princess sacrificed herself for the country, forever being remembered by the people of both countries. In front of the Dragon Gate Pass, the Chun and Mo armies chased the Liao army like crazy. In their panic, the Liao army was defeated. A third of the Liao army couldn't escape the desert border and were chased by the Mo army. Such terrifying soldiers. Even Xiao Shun didn't expect it. He could only keep retreating until he reached the border of the desert. At the same time, in the King's Landing Hall, Du Jiusheng didn't return to the palace to have lunch with her today. There was a whistle in the palace early in the morning. It was a whistle that only came when the army won. She knew that the Mo army had won, so she was in a good mood. She wanted to share this joy with Du Jiusheng when he came back at noon. But she didn't know that Du Jiusheng didn't come back even when it was time for dinner. Mute slave, is big brother Jiusheng busy today? The mute slave nodded before shaking his head. Luo Qingchun saw his panicked eyes and knit her brows. Didn't you say that you wanted the Dragon Gate Pass? The mute slave wanted to say something, but he couldn't say it in the end. But Luo Qingchun panicked as she had a feeling. Something happened. When she rushed to the royal study, it was brightly lit. No matter how important the meeting was, the eunuchs and guards outside never dared to stop her. It was because they knew that this girl who hadn't gone through the empress conferring ceremony was the most important person in the emperor's heart. This matter has to be taken care of. When General Su comes back, this one will personally hold Yao Yao's ceremony. Du Jiusheng knit his brows as a sparkle appeared in his deep eyes. He gave a sigh and said, "Don't let Qingchun know about this for now. I'm afraid that what is it that big brother Jiusheng can't tell me?" Luo Qingchun slowly came forward and cut Du Jiusheng off. Her guess was right. Something must have happened on the battlefield. He had mentioned Su Yu and Chun Yao Yao at the same time, and said that he couldn't let her know. Did that mean that it was related to them? Du Jiusheng slightly knit his brows and waved his hand. "Come over." She had just given birth to the little prince and had not fully recovered yet. He doesn't want to tell her about Yao Yao, but he also knows that he can't hide it for long. Luo Qingchun lifted her skirt and walked towards him, asking, "Is there anything you can't tell me? Is it about Su Yu or Yao Yao?" Du Jiusheng softly took her hand and pulled her to his side before slowly saying, "Yao Yao, she left us." Du Jiusheng's voice was very soft, but it was very heavy. Luo Qingchun felt her heart thumping, and her whole body trembled. Dead? Why? What exactly happened? How could Yao Yao? She could clearly feel her voice choking up. If both sides are fighting, Suyu will risk his life to protect Yao Yao and not let her get hurt. But since Suyu is fine and the Liao army was defeated in the Battle of Longmen Pass, then why did Yao Yao die? For the next hour, Du Jiusheng softly hugged her as he told her about the Battle of Songs. It was probably because Du Jiusheng was by her side that although she couldn't stop her tears, she didn't break down. Such a kind girl. They had agreed that one would prepare the wedding and the other would be the godmother of the other's child. Chapter 26-22. The next time he saw Suyu was 6 days later. In front of the palace gates, he picked up Chun Yao Yao from the coffin as he walked forward with red eyes. Every step was filled with heartache and heaviness. Once upon a time, when he stood in front of the palace gates, Du Jiusheng told him that when he came back victorious, he would arrange a marriage for them. The two of them loved each other, but they didn't have a single moment of happiness. When Luo Qingshun saw Suyu again, he was filled with age and there were a few strands of silver hair on his temples. He was only in his 20s, but his hair had turned white overnight. He looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s. If it wasn't for the extreme pain in his heart, how could a person's appearance change this much? Chun Yao Yao's funeral was very grand. The Chun country's king and the royal family all came to Moan City. The king felt sorry for his daughter because when the two armies were fighting, she had hardened her heart to not open the Dragon Gate. Only Suyu was willing to use his life to exchange for Chun Yao Yao's. Therefore, when Suyu wanted to bring her corpse back to the Mo kingdom, the Chun country's king didn't object. He felt guilty, so naturally he didn't have the face-to-face. That day it was drizzling. Suyu held Chun Yao Yao as he walked without any expression, step by step. It was like as long as he kept walking, they could be together forever and he wouldn't lose her. But when the coffin was closed, he finally couldn't take the pain anymore. Chun Yao Yao, wait for me, wait for me, wait for me to take my revenge. I'll go with you. That heart-wrenching cry mixed with the sound of the rain, it sounded very sad. Luo Qingshun, standing on the side, couldn't control her emotions as tears came down. Even if Du Jiusheng was by her side, he couldn't resist this sadness. She felt pain for Yao Yao, pain for Suyu, pain for their love. 7 days later, Suyu recommended himself to the border. He was already a general, and in a situation where there was no war, he didn't need to go to the border at all. But Du Jiusheng and Luo Qingshun knew what Suyu wanted to do. He wanted to kill Xiao Shun, because the so-called wise and resourceful Zhuge Shun was still alive. In these 7 days, he spent every moment in front of Chun Yao Yao's tomb, accompanying her, like an infatuated youth accompanying his late lover. But when he put on his armor and stood in front of Luo Qingshun, he was still a general who had killed countless enemies. Suyu, we know how you feel, Du Jiusheng said with a sigh, but now that the Liao people have retreated to the desert, it's too hard to find him. Ninth brother, you know me. Suyu's eyes were filled with determination as he looked at Du Jiusheng. Finding him or not is a matter of time. If he doesn't die, even if I die, my soul won't rest. This was the truth that Suyu had told him. He wanted to kill Xiao Shun, no matter what price he had to pay. If Yao Yao knew, she wouldn't want you to do such a thing. Du Jiusheng narrowed his eyes and gave a deep sigh. She'd definitely want you to be well, even if it means living a normal life. Big brother Jiusheng. Luo Qingshun cut Du Jiusheng off and shook her head. Let him go. I understand him. If Xiao Shun doesn't die, he won't be at ease. This time, Luo Qingshun was completely on Suyu's side. Some people were still alive after death, and some people were still alive. She knew that Du Jiusheng wanted Suyu to resign and live a normal life without any worries. Chapter 26-23. It was because she had experienced so many things that she could empathize with Suyu. If she didn't, she felt that the words empathize would be an insult to Suyu. AI. Du Jiusheng, who had always been in different side for the third time today. Other than Luo Qingshun, Suyu was one of the most important friends in his life. He didn't want anything to happen to him, and he didn't want to see him die. But if it was to bind him to protect him, he might not need it at all. After a while, Du Jiusheng waved his hand. Forget it. You can do whatever you want to do. As long as you need this one will be behind you. Big Brother Ninth. Suyu suddenly kneeled down and said, with Big Brother Ninth in my life, I can die without regrets. 3 days later, Suyu set off for the border. On the last night before leaving, he went to King's Landing to see the sleeping Nyenin. He wanted to raise his hand to touch Nyen An's face, but thinking of the rough calluses on his hand, he took it back. Actually, not only do you want to kill Xiao Shun, you also want to protect the Mo kingdom he is in. Luo Qingshun raised her hand to softly pat Nyen An's head. There's still Nyenin, right? So you didn't say anything, but his bloodshot eyes were enough to explain everything. Right now, Suyu seemed to be just a shell. If Xiao Shun died, then he would fight with all his might until the day he died. That way, he would get his revenge and protect Du Jiushang's Mo kingdom. Sister-in-law, I'll leave Big Brother Ninth to you. He looked over and tightened his grip on the sword at his waist. I won't say anything else. Only when you lose something will you know how painful it is. Only then will you know what the word cherish means. Luo Qingshun watched him leave and gave a deep sigh. She couldn't do anything, and she couldn't change anyone's ending. That included herself. She thought that Su Yu and Chen Yao Yao's matter would have an ending, but actually, that was just the beginning. A month after Nyenin was born, the ministers all asked the emperor to hold the emperor's conferring ceremony. After all, apart from Luo Qingshun, there were no other concubines in the harem, and Luo Qingshun's identity still belonged to the kind that was not legitimate. This was something that had to be done, but because of Chen Yao Yao's matter, Du Jiusheng wanted her to have some peace. The coronation ceremony was a joyous occasion, so he didn't want to make things difficult for her. Big Brother Jiusheng, you don't need to reject the suggestions of the ministers to take care of my feelings. Luo Qingshun pointed at the memorials on the table while grinding for him. Since we are in this position, we have to do what we should do. Qing looking at her obedient and sensible face, he inexplicably felt a burst of heartache. She originally thought that after becoming the most powerful person in the Mo kingdom, she wouldn't have to compromise for anything and wouldn't have to worry about anything. But in reality, that was not the case. She still had to deal with the minister's proposal. The coronation ceremony is a happy thing for me to prove my identity. Luo Qingshun softly put her hands on his. Big Brother Jiusheng doesn't need to be angry with the ministers because of this. They aren't wrong. I just want to wait a bit. Wait for your mood to be better and recover a bit. No. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips into a faint smile. Being able to become Big Brother Jiusheng's empress is also a very happy thing for me. Chapter 26-24. Luo Qingshun never would have thought that there would be an accident on the day of the emperor's coronation ceremony. The originally clear sky was suddenly filled with flashes of lightning and roars of thunder. Fierce winds howled, and patches of dark clouds covered the blue sky. Luo Qingshun was wearing a large red dress with a treasure pattern on it. She was standing by Du Jiusheng's side, and the wild wind blew up her dress. Her right hand trembled as she said, Big Brother Jiusheng, don't be afraid. I'm here. Du Jiusheng tightly held her hand and pulled her behind him as he looked at the dark clouds in the sky with knit brows. The lightning cut through the sky like it was the end of the world. Bad omen. The Prime Minister Wang Yu looked at the sky and roared, This is a bad omen. Shut up. Du Jiusheng narrowed his cold eyes. This one's empress doesn't allow anyone to say this. Even if he had never seen this kind of strange change before, he couldn't put the blame on his empress. Little did he know that in the next second, a bolt of lightning struck Wang Yu. His entire body was instantly charred, and he fell to the ground. Everyone called out in shock as they all moved back. As long as the mute slave came forward, he protected the two of them behind him. At that moment, Luo Qingshun felt her heart jump in her throat, like she was about to suffocate. It was also a kind of feeling of danger. In an instant, Luo Qingshun suddenly looked up and saw two bolts of lightning falling from the sky. The flash of lightning was too bright, and it forcefully struck her eyeballs. She felt a boom before everything turned black. It was a nightmare, a long dream, a dream that kept repeating itself. She didn't know how many times she had this dream, but the scene in the dream gradually became clear. That magnificent palace was the king's landing hall. She seemed to have Du Jiusheng by her side, but also didn't seem to have him. It was unknown who took her hand, but she suddenly pulled it back. She couldn't feel the warmth of that large hand that entered her heart. When she woke up again, she was sitting in her palace. "Empress, you're awake." Tao Zi, who had been by her side during this time, looked at her and said, "This servant will go and pour some water for the Empress." "Where's the Emperor?" Everything that happened at the Emperor's coronation wasn't a dream. She had seen those 2 bolts of lightning fall. It was impossible for Du Jiusheng to be fine. His Majesty has already woken up. Just now, he brought the mute slave to the imperial study to discuss important matters. Tao Zi answered truthfully. "The Emperor said that if your Highness wakes up, you should rest for a while or go see the little prince." Hearing Peach's words, Lin Mingya felt relieved. Thank goodness, nothing happened." "Okay." Luo Qingshan nodded and said, "Prepare to take a bath." "Yes." Nyang nyang. The scalding hot water eroded her body, giving her a feeling of awakening. What had happened during the coronation ceremony was too strange. She could even see the trajectory of space-time through the layers of clouds. Could this be the plane collapse that the system mentioned a while ago? What would happen if the plane collapsed? Was it easy to be struck by lightning? "This servant greets the Emperor." She vaguely heard Du Jiusheng's footsteps. She picked up her clothes and walked into the main hall. Du Jiusheng's figure slowly appeared in front of her. He was wearing a dark dragon robe, and he was standing not far away with his hands crossed. "Big brother Jiusheng." She softly called out to him before running over to hug him from behind. "It's good that you're fine. You really scared me to death." Chapter 26-25. He softly replied and softly let go of her hand. When he turned to look at her, there was a strange look in his narrowed eyes. But it was familiar. Did something happen? Luo Qingshan pursed her lips as a strange feeling filled her heart. He was silent for a few seconds before shaking his head. "It's nothing. The mute slave is a bit seriously injured." Ching! If you have time, go see him." "Is it serious?" Luo Qingshan knit her brows and said, "Such a big thing happened at the Emperor's coronation. They must think that I'm not the one chosen by heaven." Du Jiusheng was surprised before giving a sigh. He patted her head with a trembling hand and said, "With me here, they aren't qualified to say anything." Luo Qingshan heard this and looked down. "Then big brother Jiusheng should rest first. I'll go see the mute slave." "All right." When she turned to leave, her heart strangely felt a bit of loss. With such a big thing happening, she thought that Du Jiusheng would tightly hug her and tell her not to be afraid. But he didn't. Could it be that he also thought that his empress was a bad omen? No, impossible. She shook her head as she muttered with a laugh of self-ridicule. "Why would I think this? How could big brother Jiusheng be this kind of person?" The mute slave lived in the He Palace. Du Jiusheng had specially given him a palace. Even if many people were dissatisfied with the eunuchs having their own palace, Du Jiusheng insisted on it, and no one dared to say anything. King's Landing wasn't far from the He Palace, so it wasn't considered late when Luo Qingshan arrived. But the mute slave's room was already turned off. Ko. Luo Qingshan looked down and said, "Mute slave, are you here?" "I am Qingshan." There was a gedong sound that came from the room, but no one opened the door for her. Luo Qingshan slightly knit her brows. When she raised her hand to knock again, the door opened. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Mute slave's whole body was wrapped in bandages. He seemed to be seriously injured. God, why is it so serious? Luo Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Big brother Jiusheng isn't injured at all. The mute slave shook his head and limped away. After lighting the candles, Luo Qingshan could see everything in front of her. He seemed to be seriously injured. Some of the exposed parts of his body were pitch black. Luo Qingshan hurriedly stepped forward and held his wrist. "Sit down first." Mute slave's body suddenly trembled. He was about to do some habitual movements, but at this moment he quietly stopped. No one could understand the feelings in his heart, and no one would ever understand God had played a big joke on him, and there was no turning back from this joke. Luo Qing-chun poured him a cup of water and said with knitted brows, "Don't run around in the next 2 days. Have a good rest." He spoke without making a sound and nodded gently. Then he flipped open a book and circled 4 words on a certain page with a brush. "Send you back." "No need. I'll go back by myself." Luo Qing-chun slowly stood up. She seemed to have thought of something as she turned her head and said, "Mute slave isn't dancing now. He's flipping books." Mute slave closed the book. His left hand picked up the lamp, and his right hand held an umbrella as he opened the door. Chapter 26:26. The mute slave seemed very determined, holding the umbrella for her after opening the door. There was a small drizzle in the sky, and Luo Qing-chun saw that he didn't plan on turning back, so she quickly grabbed his wrist and said, "Tell me, why are you as stubborn as big brother Jiao Sheng?" It was like if he didn't walk with her, she would be lost. The mute slave's arm suddenly trembled, and he stopped for a few seconds before slowly moving forward. On the way, it didn't speak. When they were about to reach King's Landing, she saw Du Jiao holding the umbrella, standing not far away. "Big brother Jiao." Luo Qing-chun softly called out. Du Jiao slowly turned over. His eyes didn't immediately fall onto her. Rather, they fell onto the mute slave standing beside her. When the two looked at each other, there was an endless sadness. The mute slave put the umbrella in her hand and turned to leave. "AI." Luo Qing-chun quickly called out to him and gave him the umbrella. "I'll go back with big brother Jiao." He gave a silent nod and took the umbrella back from her hand. Without knowing why, there was a very depressed feeling in her heart. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't explain it. "Go back." Du Jiao was standing by her side at an unknown time, watching the mute slave leave with a faint gaze. His fingers couldn't help trembling. Luo Qing-chun nodded and looked away after a while. She looked at Du Jiao beside her and said, "I feel that the mute slave has changed into a different person." He was seriously injured this time. The doctor said that half of his body was burned, especially his face. When he said this, his voice trembled a bit. "It's almost destroyed." He had such a hard life in the first half of his life, and now that he can finally live a peaceful life, this kind of accident happened. Luo Qing-chun gave a deep sigh. "If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have held the Empress title ceremony. I really don't know if Du Qichao's resentment is too deep and he's taking revenge on us." But thinking about it carefully, there were more than a few people who died in Du Qichao's hands. Could it be that they didn't have any resentment? She was just lying to herself. There were too many unknowns in this plane, and they had experienced too much. He hoped that this would be the final test. He hoped that they would not encounter any more accidents or disasters. Unfortunately, everything did not go as she wished. At first, she thought that Yao Yao's death is the end of the war, but thinking she is too naive. Who was Xiao Shun? His goal was not just the Dragon Gate, nor was it just the 2 small countries of Chun and Mo. His ambition was Yinmen Pass and the Celestial Empire. Half a month later, an urgent report came from the border where Su Yu was. Half of the soldiers in the army were infected with a strange disease. Normally, they were fine, but at night, they would become anxious and do things that they could not even imagine. His murderous intent was getting stronger and stronger. Du Jiao immediately had Su Yu return, and at the same time, he summoned the mute slave who was recovering in the He Palace. Luo Qing-chun had been alone in King's Landing for half a month. After the Emperor's title ceremony, Du Jiao rarely came to King's Landing. He spent half his time in the imperial study and the other half in the mute slave's He Palace. Luo Qing-chun thought about it and could understand. The mute slave was heavily injured this time to save them. There were some rumors in the palace that the emperor didn't favor the empress anymore, but Du Jiao had actually given her more than before. Chapter 26:27. When she heard that Su Yu was back, she immediately rushed to the royal study to learn about the battle on the front lines. But she was stopped by Du Jiao newly promoted eunuch Mao. His attitude was very good as he said to her with a bow, "Empress, the emperor doesn't allow anyone to disturb the military matters." "Including me?" Luo Qingshun looked up with a bit of disappointment in her eyes. In the past, they had discussed matters in the royal study, but Du Jiusheng had never stopped her outside. But now, there were rumors in the palace. Some people said that she wasn't favored anymore. Some said that she was a bad omen, and some said that the emperor already had a new lover. But only Luo Qingshun knew that Du Jiusheng would come to King's Landing every night. He would sit not far away and drink a small pot of wine before accompanying her. Luo Qingshun knew that Du Jiusheng didn't want her to know that he came. So even if she pretended to be asleep, she never woke up. She didn't know why it was like this, but she knew that there was something on his mind. Moreover, it was something that couldn't be told to him. This feeling should have started on the day of the emperor's coronation. It wasn't that Du Jiusheng didn't care about her. Rather, she felt strangely sad. Empress, Li Mao kneeled down. Please don't make it hard for this servant. I know. Luo Qingshun gave a shrug and said with a self-deprecating laugh, I won't charge in. As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingshun slowly turned around. There were snowflakes in the sky. This was the first snow of this winter. It really came at the right time. This servant respectfully sends off the empress. Li Mao could feel the cold sweat on his back. Although the emperor had ordered that no one could go in, if they couldn't stop the empress, everyone would suffer. If they stopped the empress, everyone would lose their heads. So this was a dead end. Other than Luo Qingshun leaving, there was no other way. She was a smart person, so naturally she understood. But the snow was a bit cold, and her steps were a bit heavy. Inside the royal study, after Luo Qingshun left, Li Mao went in to report. Du Jiusheng slightly knit his brows as his eyes fell onto the mute slave. The mute slave waved his hand, and Du Jiusheng said, Understood, you can leave. Yes. When all the stories were covered in thick shadows by the black veil, when all the impossibilities became possible, when loving someone became standing in front of her, but unable to love her anymore, there was no point in living anymore. Just like the current Du Jiusheng who had switched identities with a mute slave for some unknown reason. The exchange of souls. The following Du Jiusheng and the mute slave will be described with their original names. The mute slave helped Du Jiusheng sit in the high seat. Although his face had almost recovered, the flesh on his face was stuck together, and it was no different from being destroyed. So you looked at them with a puzzled expression and frowned. What's going on? What exactly is the accident that ninth brother mentioned in the letter? His gaze landed on mute slave. Mute slave shook his head and said, I am not Jiu Yi. He is. That day, the heavenly lightning that fell from the sky caused the two of them to exchange identities. Or it could be said that they had summoned the soul. What? Su Yu's eyes opened wide as he looked at them in disbelief. Does sister-in-law Qing know about this? Du Jiusheng was surprised before shaking his head. The mute slave standing beside him replied, Master doesn't know, Jiu Yi. Then let me say it. Chapter 26-28. He couldn't let her know that he had said that he would give her the greatest happiness in her life. But suddenly he couldn't do it. It was like he was being punished by the heavens. He couldn't do it. Ninth brother, what is going on? After a while, Su Yu's deep voice sounded. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were red. He worked hard, working hard to go from a northern cold palace to the Supreme Harmony Hall, working hard to go from a cold prince to the throne. He did all of this to let the one he loved live a happy life, to protect her and not let anyone hurt her. But the heavens had played an incomparably cruel joke on him. How cruel! In the next hour, the mute slave told him everything that happened at the emperor's coronation. This sounded very strange, but it really happened. And then, what are you planning to do? So you looked at the mute slave and said, Are you going to change identities for the rest of your life? You really aren't planning on telling sister-in-law? Du Jiusheng shook his head, and the mute slave immediately understood. Master said that he can't tell. The empress. This was the last bit of dignity he had left. He hoped that in her mind, he would still be the handsome, brave, and wise Du Jiusheng. She wasn't like this. Someone who had lost everything after her face was ruined. There was silence in the air. Du Jiusheng picked up the pen beside him and wrote a line on the paper. When did the strange illness start? Su Yu was surprised before replying. It started around 10 days ago. I don't know why some people became very strange. There were strange red dots on the back of their hands, and they were fine during the day, but they became very anxious at night. Du Jiusheng knit his brows and kept writing. What was anxious? They would take out their blades to kill each other. If there was no one to kill in a certain situation, they would harm themselves. God, there's actually such a strange thing. The mute slave called out in shock. Could it be that Xiao Shun used some kind of voodoo technique? I don't know. So Yu shook his head and said, there are rumors in the army right now. I feel that if this continues, not to mention attacking the Liao army, we can even destroy ourselves. Du Jiusheng shook his head again and wrote, is there a difference between sick and not sick? Su Yu thought for a moment and said, I've thought about this before, but there's no difference in the numbers. If there's a difference, it should be that the people who camp closer to the water source are all sick. You should know what's going on. Ninth brother, could it be that they really poisoned? After Du Jiusheng wrote the final 2 words, he continued writing. This matter is not that simple. I learned that the Liao army has been making a lot of moves recently. The 100,000 soldiers of the Qin state were ambushed and are now on the verge of death. What they want is the Dragon Gate Pass. We all know that once the Dragon Gate Pass is breached, Chun Mo will die. Yes, I know. Su Yu took a deep breath and looked at him with determination. I will definitely guard the Dragon Gate and Ninth Brother's Mo dynasty. Du Jiusheng heard this, and his pen froze. After a long time, he finally wrote, 3 days later, I will depart with you. Shaoshin's strategy is on par with mine. Given the current situation, even if you rush 800 miles, I might not be able to come up with a plan for you. What? Ninth brother, you want to go to the battlefield with me? Chapter 26-29. Ninth brother, are you certain? Su Yu tightly knit his brows. You're not the same as me. I'm alone now. Life and death aren't important to me anymore. Perhaps death was a form of relief to him to a certain extent. After all, perhaps there was a person called Chun Yao waiting for him in the Yellow Springs. You can't deal with Xiao Shun. If I don't go, the Dragon Gate will be broken in 10 days. During this time, he had received letters from Su Yu at the border, and he would play games with Xiao Shun from time to time. The two of them were evenly matched at first, but Xiao Shun always took the initiative in the end. The reason was that even if it was rushed 800 miles, when the letter arrived at the border, it was already too late. AI, it's all because I'm useless. Su Yu deeply blamed himself. I can't save Yao Yao, and I can't save Ninth Brother's country. Du Jiusheng heard this and gave a bitter laugh, but he didn't write anything else. Country, what a joke. All along, he had only wanted to obtain this empire because he wanted to protect her. But now that the war at the border was about to break out, he was like this. What kind of method could he use to protect her? Thinking about it, if he wanted her and their child to be safe, he had to defend the Dragon Gate at all costs. I made my decision. I'll set out in 3 days. This was the last line of words he wrote to Su Yu, and also the final decision he made. Su Yu gave a deep sigh and shook his head. No matter what, I will support Ninth Brother's decision. Being able to go to the battlefield with you and become the military advisor of the elite soldiers is my pride. Du Jiusheng gave a slight nod and didn't say anything. After Su Yu left, there was only him and the mute slave left in the royal study. The mute slave looked at him for a while before saying, Master, are you really going? But if you leave, what will happen to the Empress? As a servant who had lived in the dark since he was born, he didn't know what to do with this kind of change. He had never felt happy about this change in his life. For him, this kind of thing made his heart hurt even more. To him, Du Jiusheng and Luo Qingshen were the two most important people in his life, his greatest benefactors. How he wished that they could live happily ever after. Even if he was sent to the 18th level of hell and never reincarnated, it didn't matter. Unfortunately, the heavens did not give him the chance, nor did they give good people the chance. After a while, Du Jiusheng wrote down a line of words on the paper. Every word was like a knife twisting in his heart, so painful that he couldn't breathe. You've been with me for so many years, so it shouldn't be difficult for you to handle political matters. After I leave, she will be under your protection. There's no need to tell her the truth. She's impatient and will definitely come to the border to look for me. I won't let her go to such a dangerous place." Du Jiusheng was silent for a bit before the mute slave on the side nodded. "Master, understand?" Du Jiusheng gave a deep sigh. There was a Li Guang sparkle in his eyes as he wrote another line. "Now that you have this identity, you can have everything you didn't have before. Take a wife and concubines and have children." "Master, I don't need this. I just want you to be well." Du Jiusheng continued to write. "Other than her, you can't touch her." The mute slave had a new life now. He had spent the first half of his life in a dark swamp, doing his best for him and risking his life for him. Chapter 26:30. With a dong sound, the mute slave knelt down as tears came out of his eyes. He kowtowed 3 times to Du Jiusheng. "This mute slave has lived to serve the master. How could I covet the master's throne? I'm afraid I can't hide it from the empress." To him, his current identity and appearance only made him feel endless fear and unease. Without knowing how long passed, the snow outside became bigger and bigger. Du Jiusheng wrote the final line on the paper. "Please stop yourself from telling her. You can't give her happiness, and you have to take away her final thoughts. How cruel of a thing this is. Does the master not plan on seeing the empress one last time?" The mute slave's question reverberated in his heart for a long time. It was like a drum that had been beating for 1,000 years, hitting his heart again and again. He crossed his hands and walked out of the royal study. Looking at the sky filled with snow, his heart sunk. Once again, one last time, let him see her one last time. In He's palace, Du Jiusheng was sitting in front of a desk, sewing a light pink pouch. There were plum blossom petals and a small piece of paper inside. The seal of the pouch sealed all the thoughts of his life. The snow was still very big, but it couldn't stop his heart from heading to King's Landing. Standing outside the dragon pavilion, the eunuchs bowed to him. "Greetings to the chief steward." He nodded indifferently and walked straight inside. It was like he hadn't seen Yin in a long time, like they had just met yesterday, like they had met in a dream. The road in the future was long, but he couldn't stay by his side to watch him grow, to spend his youth with him. Du Jiusheng's eyes were red as he placed the pink pouch in the baby's cradle before softly patting Yan'an's head. This was the love a father had for his child. This was his final look, giving him his father's love. He knew that perhaps he would blame him, but in order to protect the 2 most important people in his life, he had to do this. When he walked out of the dragon pavilion, he bumped into Luo Qingshun, who came to see Nianin. She was wearing a snow-white brocade with a fluffy cloak that accentuated her noble aura. Originally, she should have stood firmly by his side and become his empress. The empress who was loved by all, but he was born to be so unlucky. He saluted and went down the stone staircase on the left. When he brushed past Luo Qingshun, a cold voice called out his name. "Mute slave." Du Jiusheng felt his body suddenly tremble, and his back couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. He originally wanted to look at her from afar and bid her a final farewell in his heart. But now, she actually called out to him. Could it be that the mute slave had told him everything? No, it couldn't be. The mute slave was also sincerely good to her. He hoped that she would be well, so he wouldn't tell her. After so many years, he was already familiar with the mute slave. Moreover, she just called him mute slave. He slowly turned around. Luo Qingshun held a white umbrella over his head and said, "Let's take a walk." Du Jiusheng stopped, and his doubtful eyes were asking her where she was going. She understood and said with a faint smile, "Let's take a walk to the North Cold Palace." Without knowing why, she felt that this was the beginning of the story. Du Jiusheng had told her a lot about the war at the border and the mute slave going to the battlefield. She suddenly felt a bit sad. The mute slave was the first person she met in this world. Chapter 26:31. He was the same as Du Jiusheng in this life. He had suffered too much, and now he could finally enjoy it. She didn't understand why he insisted on going to the battlefield. "I still remember the first time we met in this hallway." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes, and it was like she could see the traces of time in them. The mute slave kept his head down and didn't move at all. Luo Qingshun gave a shrug and said with a faint smile, "Why do I feel that the older you get, the more similar you are to big brother Jiusheng?" There seems to be a kind of stubbornness in your bones. Du Jiusheng stopped and looked at her with a special gaze. He couldn't express his feelings and couldn't reveal his true feelings. He could only look at her with a complicated gaze that alternated between light and dark. Then he looked at her again and again. Seeing these eyes, Luo Qinshan was surprised, and her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why she had this feeling. She just knew that this feeling was very sad. It was like a piece of candy that had fallen into ice. There was no sweetness at all. Du Jiusheng sat down on the side and picked up a branch by his feet to write a line. He specially wrote it in a crooked manner, afraid that she would recognize it. After all, when they were in the North Cold Palace, they had happily written, "After I leave, you have to take care of yourself." He hesitated for a long time before finally writing this line. Luo Qinshan looked at his writing and narrowed her eyes. "Why do I feel that your writing is 30% similar to Big Brother Jiusheng's?" Du Jiusheng's fingers trembled with his head down. He wanted to write something, but he couldn't write anything with his trembling branch. "What is it?" Luo Qinshan was a bit surprised. "Did your wound open?" Du Jiusheng shook his head and wrote, "It's fine. Look at you. Your wound hasn't healed and your body hasn't recovered. But why do you have to go to the front lines?" Luo Qinshan knit her brows and said, "It's not like you can win if you go. How can you help?" She had met Du Jiusheng on the way, and he had told her that the mute slave was going to the border. This kind of news made her particularly puzzled, so she asked where the mute slave went. She didn't expect him to come to Nian An's bedroom. Without knowing how long passed, Du Jiusheng quietly wrote a line. The words were messy, and Du Jiusheng used a branch to wipe it away as soon as it was written. Luo Qinshan didn't see what he wrote, but Du Jiusheng remembered it in his heart. "Because I want to protect you for the rest of your life." The snow was getting heavier. Luo Qinshan saw that the mute slave had not spoken for a long time. She helplessly sighed and said, "If you really want to go, I can't stop you. But you have to promise me that you will be careful." The two words border were filled with fear in her eyes. It was like a place where people were eaten alive. It would be difficult for anyone who went there to return. For example, Yao Yao, whom she still can't forget. He gently nodded his head and looked at the flying snow in the sky. His deep eyes were filled with haze. No matter how white the snow was, it could not be pushed away. He took 2 steps, but Luo Qinshan was still standing in the same place. He was surprised before slowly turning around to look at her. At that moment, Luo Qinshan's heart was touched and her eyes turned red. She didn't know why she had this feeling. She just knew that in this corridor covered in snow, she looked at the mute slave in front of her and felt a very sad feeling. This kind of sadness, she couldn't explain it and couldn't understand it. "You have to leave?" After a while, Luo Qinshan slowly spoke, saying something that even she felt was strange. Chapter 2632. The mute slave wanted to shake his head, but in the end, he gave a strong nod. This was the last time Luo Qinshan saw the mute slave in the Mo dynasty. Oh no, it should be Du Jiusheng. The day he left was 2 hours earlier than the scheduled time. Luo Qinshan couldn't send him off and couldn't see him one last time. "Ninth brother, you really won't wait for sister-in-law Qing?" Suyu looked at his complicated eyes and was filled with pain. "The more you love, the more pain you will feel when you let go." He shook his head and his eyes fell onto the king's landing hall where she was. After a while, he turned and headed in the direction of the horse carriage. The sky was covered in snow, like his heart had been sealed in ice for 10,000 years. 2 hours later, King's Landing Hall. Luo Qinshan stood up and ran towards the North Palace Gate, not knowing that she didn't see Su Yu's group at all. That Su Yu and the mute slave who went out this morning haven't left yet. "This servant greets the Empress." One of the guards said, "General Su Yu and the mute slave left 2 hours ago." Left? Luo Qinshan was stunned as her heart fell to the bottom. Why did they leave early? Why didn't they wait for her? Why did she care so much? She didn't know why she had this feeling in her heart. She just knew that this feeling made her feel very unsettled. She quickly came to the imperial study and saw a familiar figure sitting at the desk. But Luo Qinshan felt that it was a bit unfamiliar. Big brother Jiusheng. The mute slave slowly looked up. Seeing her panting appearance, he guessed that she had already gone to the north gate. The mute slave said with a nod, "Why are you in such a panic? Why did they leave early?" Luo Qingchun went straight to the point with a faint guang in her eyes. "The war at the border is tense, and there are plagues everywhere." The mute slave looked away and said with a sigh, "It's better to go early." But Luo Qingchun wanted to say something, but she found that she didn't have a reason to say it. Whether it was Su Yu or mute slave, if any one of them decided to go to the border, it had nothing to do with her. Why was she so nervous? The mute slave's eyes dimmed. Looking at Luo Qingchun in front of him, he couldn't help but feel sad. She and Du Jiusheng were clearly in love, but without knowing anything, she couldn't help showing concern for him. The emotions that came from the depths of his heart were unparalleled. "All right, don't worry." The mute slave walked over to the table and sat down. He waved his hand and said, "Qing'er, go back first. I still have some things to take care of." Big brother Jiusheng. Luo Qingchun was surprised as a trace of doubt appeared in her eyes. In the past, whenever she left the imperial study, he would personally send her off. When it was raining, he would hold an umbrella. When it was snowing, he would hold an umbrella. No matter how busy he was at work, he would personally send her off. It was as if she would get lost in the palace. Without knowing how long passed, Luo Qingchun looked up at the person in front of her and said, "Do you still remember the song you played for me when we first met?" She didn't know why she asked this question. She had a doubtful tone and a doubtful look. There was a terrifying thought that spread in her heart. Why did she feel that this dude, Jiusheng, in front of her wasn't her big brother, Jiusheng? The mute slave was stunned. He could see the doubt in Luo Qingchun's eyes. Jiu Master was right. She really was smart. Chapter 26:33. Guangling San, Guangling San, Guangling San. Luo Qingchun repeated these 3 words in her heart as she felt an inexplicable sense of loss. It was like there was a deviation in that doubt, because the only people who knew the Guangling San was him and her. Even if she felt that she wasn't like him, this fact wouldn't change. "Got it." Luo Qingchun softly looked up and said, "I'll go see Nian and Jiusheng, you go ahead." He didn't look up as he softly replied, "Un." Luo Qingchun looked down and wanted to say something, but she didn't say anything in the end. After Luo Qingchun left, the mute slave looked at the door of the royal study for a long time. Then he let out a deep sigh. Towards Luo Qingchun, his heart to protect her wasn't any less than Du Jiusheng's. But he wasn't qualified. He vaguely remembered that it was the first snow of winter. He was in the endless corridor, being bullied by so many people. At that time, Luo Qingchun was like a ray of light that shined into his heart without caring about anything. He thought at that time that if he wasn't a eunuch, he would definitely love her deeply. He couldn't love her deeply, but he could protect her and take care of her. But he never thought that not only did he not protect her, he even wanted her to save him. This was a scene that Jiuyi didn't see. She had taken down Yu Longqing with her sword in 10 moves. She had no expression and her eyes were calm, like it was easy for her to defeat Yu Longqing. But he knew that Yu Longqing, she was from 3 Clear Mountain, Du Qichao's senior sister. She was good at martial arts. But she had won. She had won so easily. At that moment, she wasn't as simple as being dazzling in his eyes. Perhaps it should be said that she had lit up his life. In his heart, from that moment on, that girl named Luo Qingchun was more important than Du Jiusheng, who he had served for many years. Therefore, now that he had Du Jiusheng's body, he had to be cold to her. How hard was it? Dragon Pavilion. Nianin was lying in the cradle, sleeping peacefully. Luo Qingchun picked up the brocade pouch in the cradle and looked at it again and again. When a mute slave came to Longyan Pavilion that day, there was this pink brocade pouch in Nian's cradle. The brocade pouch was filled with the faint fragrance of plum blossoms, and it smelled especially comfortable. She guessed that it must have been left behind by the mute slave. Although she didn't know why he was so insistent on going to the battlefield, she knew that she didn't want him to go. Especially when she looked into his eyes that were filled with melancholy, she felt her heart palpitate. "Nianin, what do you think happened to Mother?" Luo Qingqian's eyes trembled as she tightly gripped the pink brocade pouch in her hand. She said to Nian, and who was lying in the cradle, "Did I change, or did he change?" Little Nian and seemed to understand her words. He reached out his little hand and gently grabbed the bag in her hand. Luo Qingqian was stunned for a moment. After a long time, she smiled bitterly and said, "I actually feel that this is my last thought." She hung the brocade pouch at her waist, and there was a faint fragrance of plum blossoms around her that smelled especially good. It was already evening when she came out of Dragon Pavilion, and he wasn't there when she returned to King's Landing. Eunuch Shin specially waited for her. "The Emperor won't be coming back today. There's still many things to take care of at the border. He'll stay in the Imperial study tonight and go to court tomorrow." Luo Qingqian softly replied. Her lips curled into a bitter smile as she said, "When has he come in the past few days?" Chapter 2634. She didn't know what was wrong with her. If it was before, even if Du Jiusheng was cold to her, she would still stick to him regardless of anything. After all, she knew that he loved her more than anyone else. But now, she didn't know why she didn't want to charge into the royal study to question him at all. What was wrong with her? Even she didn't know. Lying in bed, she slept peacefully without any dreams. Without knowing why, after the Emperor's coronation, the nightmare that always covered her never appeared again. It was like it had suddenly disappeared, but she didn't feel happy. Rather, she felt a sense of loss and emptiness. The next morning, when she woke up, she found that there were different figures in the King's Landing Hall. They were all beautiful women with exquisite clothes. She slightly knit her brows and looked at the maid on the side. "Who are these people?" The maid was shocked as she quickly kneeled down, reporting to the Empress, These are the young mistresses who just entered the palace." Young mistresses? Luo Qingqian's breath stopped, but she acted like she didn't care. She softly said, "Got it. I'll be heading out and we'll be back in the evening." The maid quickly said, sending off the Empress. Luo Qingqian didn't know why these young mistresses entered the palace. Did the ministers do it on purpose, or did Du Jiusheng secretly agree to it? As she stood outside the palace gates, she suddenly felt that none of this mattered anymore. Snow continued to fall from the sky. She walked through the long and narrow corridor and left the palace through the south gate. At the same time, the mute slave was sitting in front of the desk in the royal study with narrowed eyes and a distant expression. He didn't read any memorials at all, and there wasn't anything important. Eunuch Chun told Luo Qingqian that she was leaving the palace, and he waved his hand after giving 3 sighs. "You can leave first." "Yes." The mute slave looked at the portraits of the young mistresses on the desk for a long time before saying to himself, "Master, will you blame me for doing this? Perhaps this is the only way to make her heart turn cold towards you. But why do I feel so uncomfortable?" Since ancient times, it was normal for an emperor to have 3,000 beauties in his harem. Moreover, the current Mo Kingdom's emperor was in the prime of his life and had a bewitching appearance. How many people wanted to enter the palace? Even a single glance at him was enough to satisfy them. But to the mute slave, those people were just tools. He could only think of this way to make her disappointed in him, to make her lose hope. A man who had a change of heart was the deadliest. Luo Qingqian hadn't been to Missouri and Street in a long time. She vaguely remembered that the last time she was here was when she was Du Jiusheng. In a flash, so much time had passed. The hawkers peddling their wares along the street, the grandpa holding the candied haws. It seemed that nothing had changed. It was still the same as it was in the beginning, and the scenery was still the same. However, they had changed. They no longer communicated with each other. They did their own things and did not disturb each other. Compared to now, she seemed to prefer that time. Even if he was at the lowest level, even if he could be killed by Du Chi Chao at any time. But at least at that time, their hearts were connected. After walking a few steps, they passed by a fortune-telling stall. The fortune-teller named Xiao Chong was no longer there, replaced by the fruit-selling granny. Even now, she still deeply remembered the words that fortune-teller had said to her. Up yang and down yin, forward and backward. A girl's heart must be as clear as a mirror, using your heart to see everything in front of you. Otherwise, you will lose the most important person. Chapter 2635. Luo Qingshun stood in front of the granny who was buying fruit for a long time, not reacting at all, until the granny called out to her, "Miss, do you want to buy fruit? This is a fresh pear." Luo Qingshun was pulled back by her words, and her eyes fell onto the little boy standing beside the granny. He softly pulled the granny's sleeve and said, "Granny, we're done. Can we go to the doctor's to see Mother? Xiao Hao, don't cause trouble." The granny patiently patted his head. "When Granny is done, we'll have money to buy medicine for Mother." But Xiao Hao lowered his head and said, But Xiao Hao wants to see Mother." "Good." Luo Qingshun looked at the little boy and put the bag of money on the table. "I've bought it all. You can go back now." The granny was clearly stunned as she looked at Luo Qingshun with a bit of fear. Luo Qingshun didn't say anything as she turned to leave. After taking 2 steps, Xiao Hao came to her side and pulled her sleeve. "Thank you, big sister." Looking at his innocent eyes, Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and softly patted them. "Go find Mother. You have to eat more fruit when you're sick." Thank you, big sister." Luo Qingshun said with a nod, "Go." When she turned to leave, she didn't forget to take another look at the stall. Without knowing why, she wanted to see that fortune teller called Xiao Chong again and then do another divination. It was a pity, but there was no chance. It was already evening when she returned to the palace. Eunuch Shun was waiting for her at the south gate to take her back. Luo Qingshun slightly knit her brows, knowing that this was Du Jiusheng's idea. But she never thought that he wouldn't take her to the King's Landing Hall, but rather the Supreme Harmony Hall. Tonight, there was a banquet in the palace. Luo Qingshun never thought that Du Jiusheng would hold a banquet for the little masters. When she arrived at the Supreme Harmony Hall, she fell into a trance. However, she had to appear especially calm and indifferent. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The group of young mistresses bowed to her with soft voices. All of them were as beautiful as flowers and jade, each with their own merits. Luo Qingshun nodded faintly and walked to the top. The mute slave sat in the middle of the room, his right hand clenched tightly. His heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of his throat. He didn't know if what he did was right or wrong, but he did in the end. Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, he would take responsibility for it. It didn't matter, even if he could never reincarnate. "I never thought that Big Brother Jiusheng would have this kind of thought when there are so many battles on the border." Luo Qingshun slowly raised her glass and took a sip. The hot wine instantly entered her throat, making her more awake. "Life goes on, don't you think?" The mute slave still did not look at her. Instead, he drank a cup of wine and said, "Qing'er has a good eye. Why don't you pick a few for me?" His heart gradually sank, but for some reason, his sunken heart did not feel any pain. "All right." Luo Qingshun looked at him and said, "Why don't we have these 30 little masters show off their talents? It isn't enough to just have beauty in the harem." "Good words." The mute slave clapped his hands and said, "Eunuch Shun, pass down the words. If the Empress appreciates them tonight, they will be made concubines." Eunuch Chin's eyes were very heavy. It was like he had watched them walk all the way here, but in the end, it had become like this. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Chapter 2636. Luo Qingshun didn't know how many performances she had seen. She just knew that these little girls were all talented. Whether it was singing, playing the zither, or dancing, each one of them had their own strengths. In the end, she pointed at a girl wearing a cloud-colored brocade dress and said, "This dance isn't bad." Shui Yin greets the Empress. Her voice belonged to the coquettish type. Especially when she was dressed in red and dancing the Western dance, she looked so charming. This was completely different from her personality and appearance. Perhaps Du Jiusheng just wanted to change. To change someone with a different personality, other than her, could it be anyone else? "I feel that she's quite good." Luo Qingshun looked up with cold eyes, but there was a faint smile on her lips. The mute servant saw her like this, and his heart strangely hurt. After being together for all these years, he naturally knew her personality. Although he didn't know it as well as Du Jiusheng, he knew how sad that smile was. "Come up." Du Jiusheng waved his hand at Shui Yin. "Come sit beside this one. Let this one see what the Empress chose." Yes, Emperor. Shui Yan's heart was nervous. She had been born from a concubine since she was young. She had put in a lot of effort and suffered a lot to enter the palace. She never thought that the heavens would treat her well, finally letting her be chosen by the emperor. Perhaps it should be said, being chosen by the empress, but it didn't matter, so what? At the Supreme Harmony Hall's banquet, she was the only one chosen by the empress. Wasn't this the will of the heavens? Shui Yin came up and stood beside Du Jiusheng before slowly sitting down. She was wearing very revealing clothes, and the little girls sitting below all looked at her with disdain. Their whispers entered Luo Qingchen's ears. This person can also become an imperial concubine? Is this a joke? Isn't that so? She's dressed like a girl. She smells like a prostitute. Are you a fool? The empress naturally has a reason for choosing her. After all, this kind of girl doesn't have the ability to compete. When she heard the last sentence, Luo Qingchen sneered. She looked at the person in the aqua blue dress and said, "Then who do you think has the ability to compete?" When Meng Yin heard this, her face instantly turned pale. She didn't expect Luo Qingchen's hearing to be so good that she could hear what she said. In the next second, she knelt on the ground, trembling all over. Her voice trembled as she said, "Meng Yin deserves to die. Please forgive me, Your Highness." "It doesn't matter." Luo Qingchen gently waved her hand and said, "Come up and let me have a look." "And I, Nyang, since the Empress asked you to come up, then come up." The mute slave raised his eyes and said, "The Empress is not such a petty person." She wasn't such a petty person. She was the first to deny this. However, she could no longer show her stinginess. At this moment, she didn't even know what she was doing. Why was she choosing people? Why wasn't she turning around and leaving Nyang? Just now Meng Yin was wrong. Meng Yin is here to apologize. Meng Yin drank a cup of wine and said, "Please forgive me." Luo Qingchen just faintly responded, but didn't drink. Meng Yin felt panic in her heart. Looking at the pastries on the table, she said, "How about Nyang try this osmanthus cake?" Meng Yin just tasted one, it's quite good. Luo Qingchen was slightly stunned. Her eyes flashed with a touch of Liguang, as if she was remembering something from a long time ago. The surrounding fell into silence. Seeing that she didn't speak, the mute slave said, "Try it. I also think it's good." Chapter 26:37. Osmanthus cake. How shocking these three words were in her heart. Because no matter how Du Jiusheng changed, he wouldn't let her eat the osmanthus cake. She still had this bit of confidence. Then this person in front of her. "Who are you?" Luo Qingchen looked at the mute slave, and her voice trembled as she said, "You are not big brother Jiusheng." The two little girls beside her revealed looks of disbelief. The mute slave didn't say anything. He just looked deeply into her eyes. He knew, she knew. No matter what the reason was, she knew. Because that pair of clear starry eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent. She would never look at Jiu Yi like this, nor would she look at him like this. Seeing that the other side didn't speak, Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes. She jumped to the side of the guard and pulled out the sword at his waist, pointing it at his throat as she said, "Speak." "Ah!" Shocked cries came from beside them. The two little girls beside them instantly lost all color in their faces as they fell back. There were screams all over the banquet, but there were only two people who were calm. Her and the mute slave. Even the mute slave's calmness surprised her. He didn't panic and didn't move back. He just silently looked at her, just silently looking at her. "Protect the emperor, protect the emperor." The guards all pulled out their swords, but they didn't dare point them at Luo Qingchen. Everyone in the palace knew the position of the empress in the emperor's heart. It was simply a position at the top of his heart. Whether they could make a move, whether they should make a move or not, they would feel very afraid. "Empress." Eunuch Chen kneeled on the side. "It is normal to have beauties in the harem. Empress, don't be impulsive." Luo Qingchen ignored what anyone said. She didn't even care about what they said. Her eyes were all on the mute slave as she said word for word, "If you don't speak, don't blame me for being impolite." Since it wasn't Du Jiusheng, it didn't matter who it was. Death was his final destination. After a while, the man standing on the stage waved his hand and said, "You can all leave, but your majesty, go down. This is the emperor's order." His tone was as cold as frost, but his gaze towards Luo Qingshan was still so deep and gentle. Everyone looked at each other and said, "Yes." After a long while, only the mute slave and Luo Qingshan were left at the banquet. She narrowed her eyes, and the sharp sword inched closer. The mute slave didn't try to dodge the attack. He just said, "Some things aren't what you think they are. Not everyone is willing to do it." Changing identities, whether it was for him or Du Jiusheng, it was a kind of torture. He would rather always be that crippled, mute, and ugly mute slave. That way he could stay by Du Jiusheng's side and not leave them at the same time. "I just want to know who you are." Luo Qingshan's voice was still very cold, without any warmth because of his explanation. Eunuch Shun, who wasn't far away, trembled as he came over. He kneeled on the ground and said, "Empress, Emperor, there's an urgent report from the border. The Liao people's military advisor Xiao Shun and the 30,000 soldiers of the Liao army have been wiped out in the 10,000-mile gorge." The mute slave was surprised, but he should be happy. But looking at Eunuch Chen's face, he couldn't feel happy at all. Keep talking. Chapter 2638. 3 days ago, Dragon Gate. When Du Jiusheng arrived, half of the soldiers had already fainted. Suyu looked at Du Jiusheng beside him and said, "Big brother Jiu, what is going on? Is it poison?" Du Jiusheng squatted down to look over the poisoned soldiers before giving a nod and writing a single word, Then what do we do? This kind of border wouldn't have any specially prepared poison." Du Jiusheng thought about it before continuing to write. The source of the poison should be nearby. The next day, they followed Du Jiusheng's instructions to find the location of the poison. Because in this kind of place, as long as they found the poison, the antidote would be nearby. While looking for the antidote, they found a place. The 10,000-mile gorge. There was a narrow path that could only fit 3 horses at a time, but they couldn't see the end of it. "Big brother Jiu, we've never found this place before." So he was very surprised, since finding a new place on the battlefield was definitely good news. Du Jiusheng looked at the daughter spreading along the path and narrowed his eyes. He patted Su Yu's arm to have him look down. "You mean that the Liao army doesn't know about this place?" Su Yu said in a shocked voice, "Big brother Jiu, do you think we can use this path?" Du Jiusheng heard this, and there was a sparkle in his eyes. He knew that this place would be their greatest hope of guarding the Dragon Gate. That afternoon, Du Jiusheng found the antidote when he found the poison. Although the soldiers were better after taking it, they couldn't immediately go to the battlefield. After all, there was a process for the body to recover. Xiao Shun was very surprised when he learned of this. In his eyes, the Mo Kingdom army was made up of idiots who only knew how to use brute force. They didn't have smart military advisors. They were like scattered sand, fish on the chopping board. But now that he had found the antidote, he had reason to suspect that a powerful person had appeared in the Mo Kingdom army. As for who it was, he didn't know. But he knew that he had to move quickly, otherwise the Dragon Gate that he had to take would be lost. Xiao Shun would never know that his thoughts had already been seen through by Du Jiusheng. The more impatient a person was, the easier it was to expose their weaknesses, and they couldn't think calmly. For example, falling into the enemy's trap. The 10,000 miles gorge was a good place. Du Jiusheng used provisions to lure Xiao Shun in and set a trap in the 10,000 miles gorge. However, there was a drawback to this method. After all, there were enemy spies in every army. It was impossible for them to go all out. They could only use a small number of people to transport the provisions. After all, it was impossible for the enemy to be fooled if the 3 armies were to travel together. Su Yu spread the word in the army that this time, he and the military advisor would lead a small group of people to transport the provisions. They found a more hidden place to store the provisions. This matter naturally reached Xiao Shun's ears. His strong desire to defeat the enemy's military advisor made him choose to mobilize his troops. Of course, Su Yu was well aware of this. If they had succeeded in the 10,000-mile gorge, he and Du Jiusheng might have died. There was no free lunch in this world. If you wanted to destroy others, you had to destroy yourself first. This sentence will always be the truth. Before leaving, Su Yu had opened a cannon and sat across from Du Jiusheng. Chapter 2639. Du Jiusheng revealed a faint smile and used his chopsticks to write 3 words on the table. Me too. He also drank a cup of wine, and the spicy feeling spread in his mouth. But his expression didn't change at all. This was his first time drinking this kind of strong wine. When it spread in his mouth, he could only feel the spiciness, but he couldn't react at all. Ninth brother, do you miss her? When Su Yu asked this question, it was as if he was asking himself. His gaze extended to a faraway place, and he slowly moved away. After a while, Du Jiusheng wrote, yes. Those things from a long time ago kept flashing in his mind, like they were reminding him that even if he went to hell, he couldn't forget them. Ha ha ha. Su Yu laughed. Ninth brother, do you know? I'm not afraid at all. I'm even a bit excited because I might be able to see her soon. Then I'd rather never see her. Because not seeing her means that she's fine, that she's safe. He had done so many things just so that she could live a peaceful life. It was raining heavily in the 10,000-mile gorge that day. It was unknown if the heavens were crying for them, but the dark sky made it easier for them to hide the explosives under the rations. They didn't bring many people, only a dozen or so the fewer the better. Moreover, these people already knew that this trip to the 10,000-mile gorge was very likely to be a trip of no return. At the same time, Su Yu had his most trusted lieutenant send all his troops to attack the Liao army's camp. He had the same idea as Xiao Shun. An army without a military advisor was a pile of loose sand. Du Jiusheng's goal was very clear. He wanted Xiao Shun to die. But the Chun country didn't have many soldiers left, and the Liao army was 3 times the size of the Mo army. In this situation, no matter how easy it was to defend Dragon Gate Pass, they couldn't stop the Liao army's attack. Even if he and Su Yu tried their best to defend Dragon Gate Pass, they were gradually withering away. Right now, they already had no other way. But Xiao Shun didn't know that he always thought that Du Jiusheng was the key to this battle. After all, after so many attacks, it was because of Du Jiusheng that the Mo Kingdom soldiers could win despite being outnumbered each time. But even without Du Jiusheng, the Mo army wouldn't have been able to last long with the Liao army entering the palace. The Battle of the 10,000-mile gorge was remembered by countless later generations. Amidst the torrential rain, Xiao Shun believed that he had blocked off the Mo Kingdom's grain stockpile, that he had blocked off the genius strategist, and that taking down the Dragon Gate was close at hand. However, he would never have thought that what awaited him was not the so-called victory, but the arrival of death. That day, Du Jiusheng and Su Yu were back-to-back, both of them revealing smiles. Su Yu slowly lit the flame, blew it, and said, Yao Yao, I want to find you. It's too lonely on the road to the Yellow Springs. Here I come. Du Jiusheng heard Su Yu's shouts and closed his eyes as his lips curled into a faint smile. He suddenly remembered the first time they met. She was so pure and cute. Her eyes were so pure that it made his heart palpitate. He didn't know if his decision was right or wrong, but he knew that if he didn't give it his all, if Xiao Shun didn't die, the Mo Kingdom would definitely perish. The moment the fire lit up, he silently chanted in his heart. Chapter 2640. Supreme Harmony Hall. Everything that happened at the border was already over. But everything that happened at the Supreme Harmony Hall was just the beginning. Who died in battle? The mute slave's voice trembled a bit. He knew that if it wasn't an important person, Eunuch Chun wouldn't be this nervous. Eunuch Chun immediately kneeled down and said, General Su Yu and the mute slave eunuch who went to the border a few days ago. What did you say? The mute slave called out in shock. He ignored Luo Qingchen's sword as he grabbed Eunuch Chen's collar and said, Say it again. Impossible. How is this possible? Why did he do this? Why? It said that when they were in the 10,000-mile gorge, they sealed the exit and trapped the 30,000 Liao army inside. The soldiers that were lying in ambush above used stones and arrows. Eunuch Chun gave a deep sigh and said, whether it was the enemy or our soldiers, there were no survivors. General Su Yu. Eunuch Chun thought that the emperor was this excited because of Su Yu, but that wasn't the case. It was because of one of the people he wanted to protect in his life, his ninth big brother. Mute slave? Luo Qingqian's brows trembled as many scenes appeared in her mind. It was like the scenes covered her mind as they flashed in front of her eyes. In the next second, tears fell down like pearls from a broken necklace. Why? Why did her heart hurt so much? Why? Why did she feel so sad? You can leave first. The mute slave waved his hand and fell to the ground, bursting into tears. Eunuch Chun wanted to say something, but seeing the scene in front of him, he couldn't say a single word. This is, standing on a high platform, Luo Qingqian, holding the sword, tightly knit her brows as she looked at the man sitting on the ground in pain. Her heart was filled with fear. He wasn't Big Brother Jiao Sheng, but why was he crying? Su Yu and the mute slave's deaths, what did it have to do with him? What are you crying for? She reached out to wipe the tears on her face and looked at him with an empty gaze. Who are you? There was a deathly silence all around, and it was unknown how long passed. The man finally opened his mouth and said, I am a mute slave. What did you say? Luo Qingqian almost screamed. Her mind was blank, as if the last sentence she wrote to him was the only thing left in her mind. After I leave, you have to take good care of yourself. When all the impossibilities were eliminated, the only thing left, no matter how impossible it was the truth. I'm sorry, Nyang Yang. In the end, mute slave wasn't able to protect Jiao Yi, nor was he able to protect you. He walked forward like a puppet, casually picking up the sword beside him and placing it beside his neck. His face was covered in tears. He closed his eyes, and the stone in Luo Qingqian's hand flew towards him. The sword fell to the ground, just like her heart. Why? I worked so hard to be with Big Brother Jiao Sheng. I wasn't afraid of life or death, but why did you abandon me? Master, and we are all doing this for the good of Her Highness. Ha! She didn't know why, but at this moment, she felt that his words were very funny. For her own good? For her own good? For her own good? Did they know what she wanted or what she wanted? They didn't know anything and made their own decisions, paving the way and then saying it was for her own good. Funny, how funny. Empress, chapter 26:41. Everyone had a scale in their heart. They all thought that what was the best decision for the important person was the best decision. In their eyes, living was the best. Sacrifice was the best way to protect a person. But they didn't know that that person just wanted to live and die with them. Nyang Yang, Master's intention is to let you live peacefully. The mute slave said word by word. With his face, he said something different from his tone. In the mute slave's heart, if he didn't love someone enough, how could he protect a city for this person? Since ancient times, emperors were all greedy for life and afraid of death. They all hoped to live 100 years. Who would give up their life for the so-called empress? Ah, Luo Qingqian stood on the high platform shakily. Tears fell gently. She pursed her lips and looked at the mute slave. It's useless to say more. Nyang Yang, you don't understand. She shook her head gently. With a choked and hoarse voice, she said, living is not the so-called good. You don't understand anything. She closed her eyes. For the first time, she felt that the palace was so cold. It was like 1,000-year-old ice wrapping her in it. Longyan Hall. Taiha Hall wasn't far from Longyan Hall, but in this short distance, she felt that her feet were so heavy. Nianan slept very deeply. He didn't seem to be affected by the changes in this world. He didn't even know that his father had left this world. His mother didn't even have the chance to say goodbye to him. Little Nian and Luo Qingqian gently raised her hand and touched his head. Your father is really cruel. He doesn't want you anymore. This is the second time he doesn't want you anymore. Nian turned his beautiful eyes and looked at her quietly. Luo Qingqian raised her hand and gently touched his eyebrows. Mother is also like this. She also wants to leave you. In this life, the person she felt sorry for the most was Nianan. She seemed to have never been with him properly, but every time she wanted to leave him, Nianan seemed to feel something. His long eyelashes trembled slightly. She lowered her eyes and didn't say anything. She slowly got up and walked to the door. He was just afraid that if he took another look, he would change his mind. Returning to King's Landing Palace, he packed up his things. There weren't many things he needed to bring to the Dragon Gate. Now that she was alone, there was nothing for her to worry about, other than Yin and There didn't even seem to be anyone to say goodbye to. Early the next morning, she rode her horse to Longmen Pass. No one could stop her, and no one could stop her. She wanted to see what the 10,000-mile gorge that swallowed countless lives, including Du Jiusheng, looked like. She wanted to feel the place where he was last seen, the place where he died. Along the way, she kept telling herself to stay calm and not be impulsive. She still had Nianin. She couldn't really abandon her so cruelly. In the past, she would have picked up the Phoenix Dance Sword, charged into the desert, and killed all the Liao soldiers. She felt that this was what she would do. But now, she only told herself that she only wanted to go to a place called the 10,000-mile gorge to take a look, just a look. But the moment she saw it, she completely forgot about her so-called rationality and only took a glance. Chapter 2642. Du Jiusheng. Seeing this scene, she could feel her heart beating faster, eating away at her blood bit by bit. She was panicked and helpless as she wildly shouted Du Jiusheng's name. Again, and again. In this place filled with ghosts, she kept shouting. There were pitiful echoes of her trembling voice in the canyon, but no one could respond to her. She ran step by step, passing through piles of corpses. The smell of rotting corpses filled her nose. This place was like a mass grave, and her big brother Jiusheng was one of the countless corpses. This kind of bloody fact, how could she accept it? A corpse tripped her feet, causing her to stumble back and fall to the ground. Her eyes reddened as tears fell from her eyes. No one could understand the grievance in her heart, and no one held her hand, firmly protecting her by their side. There was a sigh sound as the bag at her waist was ripped open from her fall, and plum blossom petals fell out of it. What fell out was the note that the man had put in before he left. Luo Qingqian was stunned. She grabbed the note like she was crazy and slowly opened it with trembling hands. There was his standard calligraphy on it. There was a domineering elegance to it, but there was also a deep affection that no one could talk about. There are trees on the mountain and branches on the tree. My heart is in love with my Lord. There are trees on the mountain and branches on the trees. This is something that everyone knows. But you don't know how much I like you. I know. She slowly placed the letter on her chest and abruptly closed her eyes. Her tears fell like pearls from a broken necklace. Crystal clear and filled with endless sadness. No one could see her cry. It was like no one could see her weak side. Du Jiusheng was no longer here, so there was nothing to be weak about, because no one would help her wipe her tears, and no one would feel sorry for her. He was no longer here in the mortal world. She had already lost her place in the harsh mountains and rivers of the mortal world. Luo Qingqian stayed in the 10,000 miles gorge for 3 days and 3 nights. When she came out, her whole body was covered in blood, and her fingertips had already festered. No one knew what she had been doing inside for the past 3 days, and no one needed to know. No one would have thought that she had no intention of coming out at all, but only because she had heard a piece of news. The Liao army would join forces with the Three Ying armies and prepare to set off soon. After all, the Wanli Gorge had suffered heavy losses this time, and it would take at least 3 months for them to recover. However, the Three Ying armies were definitely not to be underestimated. Compared to swords and sabers, their firearms were much more destructive. Nianin was still in the palace. She had to go back to be safe. When she returned to Mo and City, she stayed in an inn for a night and changed into a clean set of clothes. Although that person was now in high position, he was still a mute slave after all. He was the one who sincerely wanted to help them. She couldn't understand what he was doing, but she didn't want to be unjust to him. The Empress, who was covered in blood, would definitely welcome the storm of the previous dynasty. Now, she only wanted to take Nianin away. She didn't want anything else. Mo and City's market was still as lively as before, with people coming and going. The stalls didn't seem to have changed. The only thing that changed was the granny selling pears. Chapter 2643. Luo Qingqian's heart skipped a beat as she quickly moved forward. Xiao Chong was still the same as before. The sign beside him was still the same. Xiao Chong's divination. 10 characters in a single divination. Knowing the past and the future. But this time, when he saw her, there was a hint of gloominess in his eyes. This gaze seemed to have seen through everything, and he knew everything that had happened. She wanted to change, but she was powerless. "Miss, we meet again." Xiao Chong looked in her misted eyes and said, "What does Miss want to know this time?" His voice was very deep, and he sounded like a storyteller. When he was talking about the Tao, everyone could enter the role. The ending. After a while, she slowly spoke in a cold voice without a trace of warmth. Xiao Chong looked at her, and after a few seconds, he shook his head with a bitter smile. "Miss, aren't you clear on the ending?" Without knowing why, even though Du Jiusheng said that he was a Jianghu magician, when he came to this conclusion, she took a cold breath. Luo Qingshan gave a cold laugh. She learned from Du Jiusheng and put down 10 copper coins on the table. Charlatan, full of nonsense. As soon as her voice fell, she turned to leave. But she didn't know that Xiao Chong would call out to her. In this noisy Missouri and street, other than her, no one heard Xiao Chong's words. That was the real ending. Within a year, Emoan City will be broken. Bring Yin into the 3 clear mountains. That is the best ending for this story. Luo Qingchun suddenly turned around and looked at Xiao Chong with a look of fear. How do you know about Yin? Xiao Chong didn't say anything. He just looked over and put away the 10 copper coins. It was impossible for anyone to know that the Mo country was about to fall. After the Battle of the 10,000-Mile Gorge, the Liao army had all died. Adding in Xiao Shen's death, it was impossible for the Liao people to enter the Dragon Gate Pass in a short period of time. The addition of the 3 heroes' army was something that no one could predict. Those were troops from the western regions, so how could this person know? Seeing that the other party didn't speak, Luo Qingshun coldly snorted and said, "If you don't say anything, then Jiao." What he said is the same as a Jianghu sorcerer. The moment she turned around again, she did not intend to look back. Since the other party was unwilling to say, then he would just treat him as a martial arts expert. In any case, everything could not be redone. In any case, the person who had been guarding her could not come back from the dead. As such, what was the point of asking a fortune teller in the pugilistic world? What she didn't expect was that Xiao Chong didn't stop her this time. Instead, he grabbed her wrist and said, "Host, you must take Nian into Sanqing Mountain. No one can control this collapsed plane." At this moment, she could feel that her feet were tied to a 1,000-pound boulder, and she couldn't move at all. Suddenly, the words of this fortune teller named Xiao Chong appeared in his mind. "The moonlight is like a hook, gone like a swarm. The threads are like buckles. The heart is like a mirror." The word Xiao was written with the word you and you. The word you was written with the word you and you. The word you was written with the word you. It turned out that someone had already told her his identity, but she had never thought about it or cared. You. The moment she felt her arm being let go, she quickly turned around, but that person was still gone. No, perhaps he shouldn't be called a person. Chapter 2644. Emoan City was still very prosperous, but her heart had fallen to the bottom. That year, the person who had accompanied her was no longer there. Forever. Gone. When she returned to the palace, the mute slave immediately sent Eunuch Shun to pick her up. She didn't dodge and followed Eunuch Shun into the Supreme Harmony Hall. This road seemed very long. It was like when she entered the palace, she followed the old maid to see the empress. She was filled with joy at that time as she waited to meet Du Jiusheng again, but it was a pity that they were separated again. She thought that after experiencing so many life and death separations with him, she was already numb to the pain. But when it really happened, she found that her heart was filled with pain that suffocated her. When Eunuch Shun brought her to the Supreme Harmony Hall, the mute slave waved his hand and said, "You can leave." Yes. Luo Qingshun slowly looked up at this face that looked exactly like Du Jiusheng, but her heart didn't beat at all. It was probably only later that she realized why she had such a strange feeling in her heart. Because she had tried her best to follow her heart, but who could know the truth without any preconditions? In the end, she couldn't see through the world. She couldn't see through it. Did the Empress go find Master? The mute slave came forward and gave a bow like usual. Seeing this face bow to her, Luo Qingshun suddenly felt it was very funny. She just gave a slight nod and said, "And I thought that you wouldn't come back. I came back to have you do something." Luo Qingchun slowly looked up at him and said, "Just treat it as you owing big brother Jiusheng." After a while, he said, "I'll go through fire and water without hesitation. I don't care what method you use. Take care of everything as soon as possible and send Yin and a 3 clear mountain. This is big brother Jiusheng's throne. Please return to him." I never thought about master's position. The mute slave kneeled down and said, "The matter the Empress wants, I will finish it as soon as possible." Even in a world that was about to collapse, the system wouldn't guess wrong. The Mo kingdom would die. She couldn't help thinking that if this world didn't collapse, what kind of ending would she and Du Jiusheng have? Would it be a comedy? Or would it be as tragic as now? She didn't know, because there were no ifs in this world. 7 months later, the Liao army and the Threeing armies worked together to break through the Dragon Gate. Meanwhile, Mute Slave and Yin had already arrived at Mount Sanqing. Luo Qingchun left a letter, which explained everything. The last words in their hearts were, "You can't die. This is what you owe us. Take good care of Nian and for us." After the mute slave left with Nian, and the imperial court was in chaos. Luo Qingchun casually assisted a treacherous official to ascend the throne. When he was feeling complacent and thought that he was going to become the next emperor, a large number of Liao people had already broken into the royal palace. Luo Qingchun held an umbrella and walked step by step from the long corridor to the northern cold palace. He stood outside the palace gates and nodded slightly. His eyes were calm. Although this place was barren, it was her final destination. Sitting in the pavilion where they drank wine, talked about the zither, and poured out their hearts, she closed her eyes and blew out the flames, throwing them into the grass and insects around her. The northern cold palace that night was very beautiful. The hot flames mixed with the ice and snow, just like when they first met, the pure white snow and the faint scent of plum blossoms. There seemed to be a light, mellow, and soul-stirring Guangling sand in his ears. Chapter 2645. This is a letter that you will never see, because it is written in my heart. Right now, I am standing on the high platform of the Dragon Gate. Looking at the sky filled with smoke, I cannot help but think if I could see you again, how good would that be? Because I am about to leave the 10,000-mile gorge. My life is about to end. I am sorry, Qing Air. I am still unable to accompany you through your entire life, to hold your hand in Yan'an's hand and watch him grow up. In fact, I want to do this more than anyone else, but no one gave me the chance. No, maybe I should say it is the heavens that did not give me the chance. When I exchanged identities with the mute slave, I almost did not dare to look at your eyes, because I realized that your gaze was on me from time to time. It was like a scorching light that was burning me. I did not dare to look at you. I was afraid that if I looked into your eyes, I would not be able to control myself and tell you everything. I did not dare to touch you. I was afraid that at that moment, I would hold your hand and then place it on my chest. Then even if I became like this, I would still want to shamelessly stay by your side. Perhaps even the laughing palace maids would say, "Look, that eunuch is with the Empress." I think that as long as you are by my side, I will not be afraid. The soul and the body are different. It is the depth of perception I know you understand. But I know that I cannot do this. I can be the target of public criticism. I can be consigned to eternal damnation, but you cannot. Those days that I want to give you should be every day when I go to the morning court, looking at you sleeping soundly and kissing your forehead. Then when I come back, if you wake up, I will eat breakfast with you. If you do not wake up, I will bring the memorial to the room and stay by your side to take a look at you. At noon, we can go to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers. If you want to leave the palace, I can also go with you. Do not be afraid of danger, because I can protect you. At night, we can drink wine, although I said that it is not good for a girl to drink, but I will allow you to drink a small cup because your red face is especially beautiful. From morning to night, whether it is brilliant or ordinary, it is also good. As long as I have you by my side, I want to spend my life with you. Unfortunately, Qing Air, I do not have a chance. I don't know if you're doing well, and I don't know if mute slave has exposed our identity swapping. However, I still remember the day when we walked past the Northern Cold Palace. You didn't want me to leave the Northern Winter Palace, and you looked like you wanted to say something but were hesitating. There were also other emotions that even you couldn't understand. I know everything. Because the person standing in front of you is Du Jiusheng, you have all these emotions. That's why you're uneasy, you're not afraid, you're reluctant. Do you know when I almost blurted out the truth? It was what you said. Why are your words 70% similar to Big Brother Jiusheng's? Silly girl. I've already written it so crookedly, yet you still think it's similar. What are you thinking in that little head of yours? God knows how much I wanted to touch your head, hug you, and hug you again. But I can't love you anymore, because I can't say it anymore. At this moment, facing my impending death, I closed my eyes and prayed sincerely. If there is a next life, if we can meet again, please don't take away my memory. Let me remember her forever. Chapter 26:46. I wanted to avoid the world, but I began to love this world because of you. Du Jiusheng. On the 3 Clear Mountain, the immortal path existed forever. I vaguely remember her kneeling at my feet and calling me master for the first time. She was dressed in white, and her eyes were clear and bright. I gave her the Phoenix dance sword, so she was my only female disciple. When she came to the 3 Clear Mountain, she didn't know anything, so she was very lazy to learn immortal techniques. She liked to watch the cranes fly, the blue sky, and the white clouds on the water terrace. Her immortal techniques weren't good, but my disciples in the same sect all pampered her. They liked drinking peach blossom wine with her and playing with her in the mortal world. She had a playful nature and liked all kinds of strange things, but she never participated in the annual sword test of the world. I didn't know why others would dislike her like this. Among the people under the sect of the martial uncles, there would always be 1 or 2 who didn't like her no matter what. But no one knew her true identity, and no one knew who she was. I also didn't know, I just knew that I met her in a mortal world. We had a mortal story that no one knew about. Second record, 3 Clear Mountain. The first time I met her was in the desolate North Cold Palace. That's my bedroom. I didn't know what love at first sight was, and I didn't know that liking someone was like this. I just felt that the sun was shining when I saw her, and she really looked good. In my life, there were always girls who wanted to approach me. Other than wanting to kill me, there was nothing else. But at that time, I didn't have this thought, because it was too special. It was like a willow tree that moved in my heart. Until the moment of my death, I would never forget the first time she called me Big Brother Jiusheng. If I was a wanderer outside of time, then her gaze would make me stay in a mortal world, because only like this could I keep her forever. I vaguely remembered that I almost didn't cook, but when she came, I strangely made a meal for her. Because I saw her clear as water eyes, I couldn't help rejecting her. She said I couldn't, then I would. Later I drank with her and told her things that I had never told anyone else. It was as if she was no longer an outsider, even though they had only known each other for a day. It was as if they had known each other for a very long time. I also learned from her that she wasn't a commoner. She was the daughter of Magistrate Luo and the fiancée of the Crown Prince. What a resounding title. Originally, it was much more powerful than me, a fallen prince in the Cold Palace. When he heard that, there was an indescribable feeling of displeasure in his heart. It was the taste of wine turning into vinegar. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. When she met the mute slave by chance, she found that he was preparing clothes for her. She felt a little upset. The moment that girl entered the Northern Cold Palace, every word she said to me seemed to be telling me that she liked me. She would ask me when I was going to marry her. When she was angry, she would cross her arms in front of her chest and turn her face to the side. I would always look at her with half-closed eyes, feeling the beauty of it all. It turned out that the continuous accumulation of power and connections was not to make the days of keeping a low profile more comfortable. Instead, he was waiting for her to appear. If only God had told me in advance that such a woman would appear in my life. Chapter 26:47. On the day mute slave gave her the clothes, I took her out of the palace to buy some things. The clothes she wore, the snacks she ate, and the rouge she used. Although I felt that even if she didn't use rouge, she would still be beautiful. She was prettier than anyone else in the world. I liked her innocent appearance in front of me. I liked the way she held my hand when we walked side by side. I knew I could not resist such warmth, nor any of her smiles. But I didn't expect that we would meet with an accident on this trip. A fortune teller self-righteously talking about my future with her. I couldn't fully understand what he meant, but I could understand his literal meaning. Look at the person in front of you. Otherwise, you will lose the most important person. She seemed to care a lot about the fortune teller's words. Her cheeks were slightly pale, but I couldn't listen to him. How dare a fortune teller predict their future? Why? I left the money, held her hand, and turned to leave. However, he said something that was neither right nor wrong. It was a baffling statement. I didn't understand what he meant, but I could investigate. After returning to the palace, she rested in her room because she was allergic to osmanthus cake. I ordered people to investigate the fortune teller's background. Could it be that he was my enemy? That's why he spread such nonsense? But the answer I got was that the fortune teller had disappeared. I ordered people to continue waiting. I wanted him to appear tomorrow and give me an answer. But 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, for days, it was as if the fortune teller had disappeared. He didn't appear again. The more it was like this, the more uneasy I felt. Moreover, she and the crown prince finally met. Mute Slave's disappearance made us all worried. When we split up to look for him, she confronted the crown prince. I didn't know how she defeated Yu Lingqing. I only knew that when the crown prince wanted to hurt her with his sword, my heart skipped a beat. I felt like I was suffocating. In the next second, I didn't say anything and grabbed the sword. Drop by drop, blood fell to the ground. Actually, I didn't feel any pain. I even wanted to see her worried and concerned about me. I could see the anger in the crown prince's eyes. I could also see the shock and distress in her eyes. After that day, I began to consolidate the forces in my hands at an even faster pace. I guessed that the crown prince would deal with me, but I didn't know how he would deal with me. After all, in terms of status, I would always be on the passive side. In that case, I could only wait for him to give himself away and then go all out. Of course, I didn't expect that the so-called gamble would be to have her completely. Own him. The crown prince was very smart. He didn't want to marry the princess of the Chun kingdom, but he couldn't openly go against the emperor, because before he ascended the throne, anyone could replace him, even if he had his mother and the entire northern faction behind him. Therefore, he used the method of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only would he be able to get rid of him, but Chen Yaoyao would also be labeled as a dissolute woman. Unfortunately, he thought that I brought a eunuch, but the person I brought was her. In such a dangerous situation, she did not hesitate to save me, regardless of the consequences. It was as if our hearts were connected, because in the moment of danger, I never hesitated to save her. Even if he had to pay the price with his life, it didn't matter. Chapter 2648. This time, the crown prince was the target of public criticism. With Chen Yaoyao's testimony and the fact that nothing had happened between me and her. Even if he had 100 mouths, it would be hard for him to defend himself. Since the crown prince had personally lit the fuse, I would not be polite. Even though I did not think that the Feast of Hongmen in Supreme Harmony Hall would happen in this kind of situation. Father Emperor was angry at the crown prince for being useless, but if I did not have any power at the time, I could not have completely overthrown him. Thinking about it now, that was an exciting fight. What followed was Yu Lingqing's death, the crown prince's death, and the empress' death. When I coldly watched all of this, I found that my family's girl was also coldly watching all of this. Doing all of this, other than letting her stay by my side, was to take revenge for the Luo family's 66 lives. Grudges, killing people had to be repaid with their lives. She was not a weak woman and would never talk to me about revenge, but that did not mean that she did not need to do it. Then, she was pregnant and fainted during the sacrificial ceremony. At that moment, it really scared me. When I found out that she was not sick and had a child, I was much more relieved than happy. It was said that if an emperor had to choose between a concubine and a prince, the emperor would definitely choose the prince. But if she encountered any danger because of the child, I hoped that this child would never appear. His appearance was to have one more person to protect her, not to threaten her life. However, she seemed to know more about this child than I did. When the imperial doctors did not know whether it was a prince or a princess, She told me that it had to be a boy. She even gave him a name, Yin, and actually, I did not know why she gave him this name. At that time, when I was in a different place, I seemed to understand. It might be Nien Junin. When the prince was born, everything seemed to return to normal. No one could threaten her anymore. Any minister that was important to her was no longer an official in court. I could not kill her, but I could not bear to hear others say that she was not good. Since that person felt that she was not good, then they should leave, because I did not want to see her either. After a long time, everyone in the court and harem knew of her position in my heart, and no one dared to say anything bad about her. Because not good equals returning to one's hometown, and glory equals returning to one's hometown to farm. But we didn't expect that our smooth-sailing life would usher in an unforeseen event. Chen Yaoyao's death was a painful decision for Suyu. I am extremely grateful to Chen Yaoyao, because if not for her help, Qing and I would not be where we are today. I can't even get hold of the crown prince's weakness, so I can't sit on the throne. Originally, he thought that when she came back, he would definitely not let her go to the battlefield, but he did not expect that she would never come back. Such a staunch woman, for the sake of the person she loved, she did not hesitate to hold on. But in the end, she still closed her eyes and died. What a heart-wrenching thing this was. As for Suyu, seeing her die with his own eyes, how painful would that be? I could understand and even feel such pain, because I was also afraid of losing her. It's just that what will come will come. I can't escape.